Throughout the Pokemon anime, Ash Ketchum has become one of the most powerful trainers of all time, gathering some of the best Pokemon from each region to break limits that we have never seen before. But this journey wasn't always smooth sailing, and a lot of these Pokemon have really tragic backstories and hardships while traveling with Ash, so I wanted to go through every single one of Ash's strongest Pokemon's lore to show how far all of them have come to earn their spot as Ash's strongest Pokemon. I'm going to be going in order of when Ash caught these Pokemon, starting off with Pikachu, Ash's starter Pokemon. The story starts off when Ash's Pikachu was actually a Pichu, roaming the Kanto region. When Pikachu was a baby Pokemon, he was all alone, abandoned by his group because his electricity was unpredictable and uncontrollable. While Pikachu was roaming around by himself, he bumped into a group of Coughings, which ended up poisoning him and dropping him down a mountain, where he landed into the arms of a Kangaskhan. And ever since then, they were locked in. Kangaskhan treated Pichu as one of her own, since Pichu was a baby Pokemon that was abandoned and it would be cruel to just leave him out by himself. Pichu also considered these Kangaskhan's his family, since they ended up bonding really well together after traveling for so long, and even considering the baby Kangaskhan its little brother. Even though everything seemed fine, there was one major problem the mother Kangaskhan was hiding from Pichu. And it's the fact that mother Kangaskhan's are only meant to be taking care of one baby Pokemon. The mother Kangaskhan was getting really tired carrying around two baby Pokemon and even having to split the food resources amongst two Pokemon. And Pichu started taking note of this and even started feeling really bad for being around the Kangaskhan and tried to leave, but the mother Kangaskhan, regardless of all this, still wanted to take care of Pichu and would never let him leave since she realized that he needs a home. Later that night, Kangaskhan brought Pichu and her baby into a cave so they could get some rest, and that night Pichu made the tough decision. Pichu thought that he would be better off leaving them so that the baby Kangaskhan could get all the nourishment and attention that it needs, and Pichu should just go back to the wild. So sadly that night, that's what Pichu did. He left his brother and mother without saying anything and just waved goodbye. And through all this emotional build-up, the Pichu evolved into the Pikachu that we know and love today, because Pichus evolved through their happiness level and Pikachu was feeling a lot of grave emotion while leaving his mother. So fast forwarding a bit between now and the first episode of the first Pokemon anime, which is about 6 years, Professor Oak catches Pikachu. And on Ash's first day for becoming a Pokemon trainer, he misses the opportunity to get his starter Pokemon and he gets left with Pikachu, and he was held off for a reason. I don't know what Pikachu saw between leaving Kangaskhan and now, but he's very angry and doesn't have the same personality. He's just stubborn and useless and doesn't want anything to do with Ash, and he also gained a bit of weight. On their first adventure, Ash and Pikachu were roaming around and they encounter a Sparrow. Pikachu uses Thunder Shock on the Sparrow, and Sparrow is a sore loser and calls his gang to back them up. And these Sparrows have shooters because the second they caught up to Pikachu, they jumped him and tried to kill him. Even though Ash just met Pikachu, he vows to save Pikachu from this situation, but Pikachu doesn't care about Ash and tries to run ahead but gets jumped even more. Ash picks up Pikachu, who got knocked out by the Sparrows, and jumps down a river so the Sparrows wouldn't follow them. At the end of this river, they end up meeting Misty, and Misty sees Pikachu's condition and says they immediately need a doctor. But in the corner of Ash's eyes, the Sparrows are still chasing after these kids, so Ash steals Misty's bike to try to get away, and I didn't know Ash was cold like this. While Ash is riding this bike, it starts raining and Pikachu is holding on to his dear life. The Sparrows are still chasing this 10-year-old kid and a dying rodent. The Sparrows catch up to Ash and start pecking him, which makes him fall off the cliff and lose the bike. Pikachu also falls off the bike and has no energy left. Ash is out of all his options, except one. Put Pikachu back inside of his Pokeball. If you didn't know, Pikachu absolutely hates going inside his Pokeball since he hates being isolated and alone and feeling like he's abandoned. But Ash begs Pikachu to get inside the Pokeball, and if he does, he'll never have to get inside of it again. He just wants to save Pikachu's life. While the Sparrows are closing in on them, Ash gets up and vows to protect Pikachu even if it costs him his life. And when all hope was lost and the Sparrows are about to do the finishing blows, Pikachu, instead of getting inside the Pokeball, jumps on top of Ash's shoulder and shows us the true power that he has inside, using a move to simultaneously wipe out all the Sparrows. This Pikachu is OP. In the process of this, Pikachu ended up frying Misty's bike, but when they woke up, there was a rainbow over their head and the legendary Pokemon Ho-Ho was gracing them. And ever since then, Ash and Pikachu were locked in. Pikachu respected Ash and Ash respected Pikachu. From this point forward, Pikachu is Ash's star Pokemon, and they went on to catch loads of friends and defeat Brock to get the Peter City Gym Badge and Misty to get the Cerulean Gym gym badge. Pikachu was also very smart versing Brock. Since he had the type disadvantage, he set off the sprinklers, and when there was water all over Onix, he zapped him and won the battle. Everything was looking up until Ash and Pikachu versed the third gym leader, Lieutenant Surge. The star Pokemon of the third gym is Raichu, the evolution to Pikachu. When Ash went up against his Raichu for the first time, they got absolutely bodied. Pikachu saw the gap in power between a Pikachu and a Raichu. Lieutenant Surge told them straight to their face the only way they're gonna beat him is by evolving this weak Pikachu into a Raichu so he can unlock his true power. When Pikachu was in the hospital after his brutal defeat, Nurse Joy actually came up to Ash and gave him a Thunderstone, letting him know that this is the only way to evolve Pikachu to a Raichu by touching this stone. Ash was left with a pretty tough decision if he wants to evolve Pikachu, but he was gonna make it be a group decision and get Pikachu's input. When Ash presented the idea to Pikachu, he was more for pushing the idea of evolution, but then Pikachu had a major prep talk with Ash, basically saying that he wants to win by his own power and slap the Thunderstone out of Ash's hands. Well, technically Pikachu hit Ash's hands, since if he touched the Thunderstone at all, he would have evolved. Ash and Pikachu figured out that for Raichu to be so strong, he had to sacrifice something, and he sacrificed his speed. So when they came back for round 2, they knew exactly how to counter Raichu, which they did, and they ended up winning the battle, proving that Pikachu is just as strong as Raichu, if not stronger. This revelation was important to Pikachu since he never really wanted to evolve into Raichu, and many future opportunities are presented to him to evolve, but ultimately he always stays the lovable Pikachu that he is. And that would be the end of that, right? Pikachu figures out that he always wants to be a Pikachu and wants to travel along Ash's journey, but there is a hiccup along the way. In a later episode where Ash and Pikachu are traveling through a forest, Pikachu ends up saving a baby Pikachu from dying in a river. Because of this, the group of Pikachus in this forest praise Ash's Pikachu for his heroic efforts. Pikachu started hanging out with them a lot more, and they really respected Ash's Pikachu, even initiating him as one of their leaders. And Ash was taking notice of this, but not in a good way. He was getting a little bit jealous that Pikachu was spending a lot of time with them, but he also wanted the best for Pikachu, so Ash made a very impulsive decision. That night, without even discussing it to Pikachu fully, he just tells Pikachu he's gonna leave him here so he can spend time with the Pikachus in the wild, since that's where he belongs, and he's gonna leave and continue his journey. Brock and Misty were super confused by Ash's actions, and Pikachu was the most confused, since yeah, he did like the wild Pikachus, but Ash was always his #1 priority. So while Ash was leaving in a pretty emotional scene, Pikachu subverted his expectations by deciding to come along with Ash, and the wild Pikachu ended up saying goodbye to our Pikachu. It was a really heartwarming scene, and it proved that Ash and Pikachu's bond cannot be broken. This was proven even further in the Pokemon movie, where, if you didn't know, Ash died and got turned to stone, but Pikachu and the rest of the Pokemon's tears were so powerful that it was able to dissolve Ash from turning into stone and bring him back to life. After all that, through thick and thin, Ash and Pikachu were able to gather all 8 gym badges so they'd be able to enter the Indigo League while having stalkers on their tail. But I'll make a video on these guys later. After this, Ash and Pikachu entered the Indigo League, and as most of us know, Ash lost it, and he went into a pretty depressive slump. But the only Pokemon that was able to cheer Ash up and make him bounce back from this depressive slump was Pikachu, kind of a full circle of their entire journey, since in episode 1, it was Ash dedicating himself to Pikachu, and now in this final episode, Pikachu fully dedicated himself to Ash. Ash committed to going to the Orange Islands, which is another part in the Kanto region, and they even won the tournament there, and that seems to be the end of Ash and Pikachu's journey in the Kanto region. But easily, when you think of the Kanto region, there is one true ace from this season, and it is Ash's Charizard. Even though now it seems like everything is good between Ash and Charizard, their story is actually really complex. Early on Ash's journey, he meets Charmander on a rock. He looks pretty sick and sad, but he won't move at all. Ash tries to catch this Charmander and bring him to a Pokemon Center since he's sick and clearly needs help, but Charmander refuses to move from this rock, let alone getting caught. After multiple unsuccessful attempts to save the Charmander's life, Pikachu comes over and lets the gang know that Charmander says that it actually has an owner and it's waiting for him to return. Skeptical, the gang stays over at a local place to keep watch at Charmander, waiting for its owner to return. When the gang pulls up at this spot, they meet Damien. They overhear him talking about how he abandoned a Charmander because he was too weak, and this is just crazy to me because imagine in real life if you pull up to a hotel and a group of people are flexing that they beat and abandoned their dog. With Ash and Brock being the only 2 sensible people in the room, Brock goes up to Damien and presses him. Brock tells Damien he should go back and get his Pokemon because he's going to die since it's raining outside, and when Charmanders lose the fire on their tail, they die. Damien just doesn't seem to care, so Ash, Brock, and Misty go out and rescue Charmander. When they finally find Charmander, they find that he's getting beaten to death by an army of sparrows. Pikachu uses Thunder Shock on the sparrows, and they wrap Charmander in a blanket to preserve the fire on his tail so he doesn't die. Charmander is holding on to his life. They manage to bring Charmander to Nurse Joy, and she heals him right up. But later that night, Charmander escapes because he is shocked that Damien actually abandoned him. Charmander unfortunately develops Stockholm Syndrome, where despite the abuse Damien has done towards him, he still wants to go back to Damien since it feels like home. And to be honest, Damien is a straight bum. To hurt such a powerful and loyal Pokemon like this, especially in the Kanto region, Damien definitely fumbled for whatever trash he has on his team. While Charmander was roaming around, he encounters Team Rocket, which has just captured Pikachu. Charmander uses Flamethrower to defeat Team Rocket and free up Pikachu, repaying his debt to Ash. And this bum Damien was lurking around the corner, saw how powerful Charmander really is, and switched up, saying he wanted to get Charmander back on his team. Damien started gaslighting Charmander into believing that he was searching for Charmander the entire time and that he was coming back. Charmander is sick of the lies and refuses to join Damien's team. Damien gets salty and cusses out Charmander by telling him that he was never coming back for him and that he's weak and worthless. Charmander gets his get back by hitting Damien with a flamethrower and joining Ash's team in the end, since Ash was the only nice trainer to him. And that should be the end of that story, right? Ash saves Charmander from his abusive trainer, Charmander joins Ash's team, they get along, are loyal, and become the best of friends and a star Pokemon of Ash's team. But not all stories have the best endings. While Charmander was traveling along Ash's team, he was actually pretty grateful to be on the squad and helped Ash a lot and listened like all the other Pokemon. They even had a really wholesome moment where Ash was stranded in a cave due to a blizzard, and Charmander saved him and all the other Pokemon's lives by keeping them warm because of the fire on his tail. Ever since then, Charmander seriously became Ash's #1 Pokemon. He consistently used them throughout every episode, defeating tons of Pokemon he seriously shouldn't have beaten, like this Golem, and he was seriously getting way ahead of level compared to all of Ash's Pokemon. Charmander could honestly 1v5 them. Because of Charmander's proficient dominance on Ash's team, there's an episode where they go to a city with a bunch of Executors. Charmander uses Flamethrower and defeats a bunch of Executors, giving him a lot of XP, which caused him to evolve into Charmeleon. At first, this would be seen as a good thing, since Pokemon evolving is always good, right? But the once innocent, loyal, and strong Charmander we once knew was now gone, since Charmeleon didn't care about Ash anymore. This was the start of his downfall. If you've only watched the Pokemon anime, you may have been confused on why Ash's Charmeleon didn't want to listen to him anymore after evolving. But if you played the Pokemon games, you may know this feeling all too well. In the Pokemon games, there's a mechanic where the number of gym badges you have as a trainer directly correlates to how strong of a Pokemon you can use. This is to prevent new trainers from using super high level Pokemon they really should have access to, and that's basically what happened to Ash. Charmeleon redeemed Ash unworthy of his power and just stopped listening to him. In Charmeleon's eyes, things are going to work on his term and his terms only, and he doesn't really care what Ash has to say. Charmeleon's rebellious phase was getting out of control, and Ash came to realize this. Along their journey, Ash wanted to help another trainer evolve their Paris, and he sent out Charmeleon to have a friendly battle. Keyword friendly. Charmeleon just didn't care at all and wanted all the smoke and completely went overboard with this Paris. After that mishap, Charmeleon shot his fire at Ash. It got so bad, Ash had to send out Pikachu to deal with Charmeleon to prove that he's not that guy. Ash was pretty sad about this, since his once beloved Charmander that was once a staple on his team is such a bratty Charmeleon that wouldn't even listen to a single instruction. Ash decided to give Charmeleon one last chance against Paris to help him evolve, and when he sent out Charmeleon, he went even crazier, and if he did not bump into Paris's poison needle, that Paris would have been dead. After that, Ash had to decide to make Charmeleon take a bit of a backseat for now, and let him chill off and figure out what's actually going on with this Pokemon. And that was it for Charmeleon. Ash made the smart decision to not bring out Charmeleon for a very long time, and the only time Charmeleon saw the light of day is when Ash was in a life or death situation and had to bring out one of his final Pokemon, Charmeleon. Ash was being chased by fossil Pokemon that wanted to kill him, and when Charmeleon finally came out, he just looked there smug. He didn't care about Ash's life, he didn't care about this situation, and he low-key just wanted to sleep. One of the fossil Pokemon, Aerodactyl, was a menace and kidnapped Ash and Pikachu and swatted Charmeleon on the way out. This hurt Charmeleon's ego so bad it challenged Aerodactyl to a 1v1. Aerodactyl didn't really view Charmeleon as anything and just emoted on him again, and this pissed off Charmeleon a lot, evolving him into the Charizard we know today. And this Charizard was a beast. It was so powerful, it was able to defeat Aerodactyl and even save Ash. For a moment, Ash thought that everything was back to normal. Its Charizard saved him from the bottom of his heart because its trainer was in trouble, but in reality, Charizard only evolved because its ego got hurt, not because Ash got kidnapped.
So, nothing really changed with Ash and Charizard's dynamic. Charizard was still at the back of Ash's team as this wild card and not the forefront that he used to be. But this all changed when Ash went to the 7th gym leader. Ash challenged Blaine, the 7th gym leader, to a Pokemon battle, and he sent out his Charizard, a risky move, and Charizard just chilled on the side and he didn't care, up until he saw Blaine's Magmar. This Magmar stopped a Volcano Crisis, gaining the respect of Charizard, and Charizard challenged him to a 1v1, considering Magmar his first worthy opponent. In this fight, we saw the true power of Charizard. Him and Magmar went head to head, even fighting in lava, and Charizard revealed his signature move, Seismic Toss, ending the battle and proving that he is the strongest fire Pokemon on Blaine's Island. It was nice for Charizard to finally deem someone a worthy opponent and show us how powerful he truly is. To be honest, Charizard must be like level 60 while everyone else is level 40. Ash was then appointed the Fire Gym Badge by Blade. Finally, maybe something that would be able to prove his worth to Charizard. But even after Ash getting this badge, Charizard did not respect him at all, and it was back to the same old same old. Charizard cannot get over the fact that this 10-year-old kid could improve, and he will always view Ash lower than him. Now, every side has two stories, and we never actually looked at it from Charizard's perspective. How did Charizard develop this ideology? It's simply because of the trauma he got from his old trainer. Charizard got abandoned because he was considered weak and not good enough, and now that he finally has the power and is strong and can body practically anybody, he's scared that if he becomes complacent and listens to a trainer like Ash, it'll end up making him weak and he'll get abandoned all over again, repeating the cycle. So we didn't see Charizard for a while, and the only other Pokemon we've ever seen Ash's Charizard fight after that point was Mewtwo and his clone Pokemon, where Mewtwo is obviously the strongest Pokemon in that region, and Charizard had to challenge himself in the Pokemon movie against Mewtwo and the Charizard clone. In this Pokemon movie, if you didn't know, Ash actually died and got turned to stone, and Charizard and the rest of the Pokemon cried, and this is very monumental to Charizard's character, since this is the first time we've seen him show genuine affection towards Ash, since him losing his life is pretty sad. But Ash came back to life and Charizard went back to being his old self. But this brings us to the heights of Charizard's career. The Indigo League, a tournament where trainers around the region come together and fight to have a chance to verse the Elite Four and proving who's the best of the best in the Kanto region. This is a big moment in Ash's career and an even bigger moment for Charizard, since he only wants to verse strong Pokemon, so only strong Pokemon should be here, right? The Indigo League had over 200 participants, and Ash brought along Pikachu, Pidgeotto, Bulbasaur, Squirtle, Krabby, and Charizard as his 6th Pokemon on his team. And Ash took this tournament super seriously, making it out of the top 200, being one of the finalists in the top 16. And throughout all the battles leading up to this, he didn't use his Charizard once. He knew he was a wild card and wanted to play it safe by using his loyal and reliable Pokemon, which may have been his downfall. For this top 16 round, Ash is going up against a kid named Richie, and they're down to their final Pokemon. Ash only has Charizard left, while Richie has Charmander and Pikachu. And to be honest, how did this kid even make it to the top 16 with his weak team? But I'll digress. Ash takes the risk and sends out his Charizard in front of thousands of people at the live tournament event. And Charizard listened to Ash. He actually defeated Richie's Charmander with ease, since Charizard is way stronger than Richie's entire team. But then Richie sends out his star Pokemon, Pikachu, or Zippy. Charizard was far from impressed from his matchup. He has the power to beat this Pikachu, but he's just disappointed that this is what everything was leading up to, him versing a couple first and second stage level Pokemon, rather than him fighting strong Pokemon like the Magmar he met back at Blaine's Island. So instead of Charizard swiftly taking care of this Pikachu so they can fight stronger trainers the farther they go up in the tournament, he chooses the nuclear option. Charizard throws it all away at the height of his career and refuses to battle. Charizard's actions resulted in Ash getting eliminated from the Indigo League, the thing that they were working up for so long, all over his pride. Now that's where the story would have ended for most trainers, including myself. If I got that amount of disrespect in front of a tournament, that lizard is off my team. But that's not where it ended for Ash. Ash still had a little bit of hope in Charizard and kept him on his team. He didn't treat him any differently, he was patient with him and worked with him. In the Orange Islands the next season after the Indigo League, there was a glimmer of hope for Charizard. Ash was versing a pretty strong Poliwrath and sends out Charizard, but Charizard doesn't want to listen until Charizard gets one up by the Poliwrath, getting frozen and defeated. This was one of the first times Charizard felt true defeat. He lost a fight because of his own incompetence, even though Ash trusted him. But Ash didn't dwell on Charizard's loss at all. He was actually more concerned about Charizard's health since he took on a full Ice Beam from the Poliwrath and is potentially dangerous for Charizard. Ash stayed up all night healing Charizard, being with him and keeping him warm, and Charizard realized that Ash really did care for him and Ash wanted the best for him and didn't care if he won or lost. So since Charizard finally saw the good in Ash, he threw away his abusive past with Damien and looked forward towards the future with Ash. And when they teamed up, they were stronger than ever. The next day, when they were working together, they bodied the Poliwrath, and Charizard finally swore his allegiance to Ash as his loyal Pokemon, and they were unstoppable. Charizard was the Luka Doncic of the Pokemon League. This guy was unstoppable ever since they teamed up, and they even won the Orange Islands together. Things were finally looking consistently up for this lizard. No one was really a challenge for Ash and Charizard, and they even went to the Johto region, and that was even easier for Charizard. He had basically no threats throughout the Johto region at all. Word was spreading around fast that Ash was a trainer that was able to tame this powerful Charizard, that they got invited to the Charizard Valley, and everything changed from that point. The Charizard Valley is a place where only the best Charizards live. They eat, sleep, fight alongside each other to only improve as a Charizard. Liza is the leader of this valley, and she wanted to test Ash's Charizard skills to see where he compares with the rest of the Charizards. And Ash's Charizard was the weakest in the room. Seriously, there was not one Charizard that he was stronger than in that valley. They even wanted to test Ash's skills as a trainer to see if he knew how to fly with Charizard, and they were incapable of even flying together. Charizard was just a stroke of dumb luck, fighting low elo people, and when he finally got to the big leagues, it showed that he wasn't as good as he really thought he was. Once Liza saw Ash's Charizard's performance, she actually banished him from the kingdom since she did not think he was worthy at all from training there or even being around these Charizards. Charizard spent that entire night reflecting in the water on how to improve and become a better Pokemon. Even Team Rocket felt bad for Charizard getting outcasted by his own people, that they helped Charizard get back into the Charizard Valley by staging a Team Rocket attack and making Charizard be painted as the hero that saved everyone. Because of all of this, Charizard got invited to stay at the Charizard Valley to train and become as strong as possible. And with new opportunities presented with Charizard, that just means some doors have to close. And unfortunately, the door that has to close is Ash traveling with Charizard. Charizard was pretty down with just denying the offer and still traveling with Ash, but Ash knew what's best for Charizard is to stay with Charizard to get stronger and to be the best that he could possibly be. Charizard was pretty shocked by Ash's response, since he didn't think Ash would want him to go stay with these Charizards, but Ash knew it was for the greater good and left in tears, leaving Charizard behind at the Charizard Valley, promising to meet again as friends. And Ash for a while didn't have Charizard on his team. He was traveling throughout the Johto region and had a whole side plot with this legendary Pokemon Entei, who was this girl's father, and this Entei wanted to basically kill Ash because he shot an attack at him and Pikachu, making them fall to their death, and out of nowhere Charizard flew over at Mach speed and picked up Ash and Pikachu, saving their lives and helped aiding them in this battle against this Entei. But this Entei wasn't a regular Entei, it was completely broken and could summon icicles from the ground, and in the end Charizard did lose the battle, but this Pokemon did get considerably stronger while training at the Charizard Valley, and honestly it was just really hyped to see this Pokemon again, even if it was a small cameo in this movie, and we managed to get a glimpse of Charizard's power and what he was doing while he was away. When Ash continued on his journey, he collected 7 out of the 8 gym badges in the Johto region, and to be honest, his team was kind of lacking because when he went up against the 8th gym leader, they got completely destroyed. Claire was kind of making fun of Ash and his weak team, and when they were chilling outside, out of nowhere, they see a shadow of Ash's Charizard pulling up with Liza by a complete coincidence, because Liza normally comes to Claire's island to train a bunch of the Charizards, and Ash
Ash happened to be here, and he was so happy to see how strong his boy finally was. Even Claire was kind of shocked, thinking that Ash wasn't a powerful trainer to own a Charizard like this, and we end up learning that even though Charizard has been busy training at the Charizard Valley, he now also has a girlfriend. So Charizard has definitely been living a good life after leaving Ash. Everything seemed fine with everybody having a reunion, but in the distance, Team Rocket was doing their usual shenanigans. Because the gym leader, Claire, really values this item called the Dragon Fang and protects all the dragons in this island, and Team Rocket managed to steal the Dragon Fang, encounter a Dragonite, manipulate the Dragonite into believing that Team Rocket owns the Dragon Fang, and Ash and the rest of the gang are gonna try to take it from them, and Dragonite ends up joining Team Rocket. This Pokemon was so hospitable to Team Rocket too, giving them a bunch of food and just wanting to see his homies win, but Team Rocket switched up on Dragonite by going over to this ancient prayer flame that all the dragons value, and they end up burning down Dragonite's entire village. This obviously gets Dragonite mad, and this Pokemon goes berserk, just being reckless and blowing up everything around it. Eventually, Ash and the gang encounter Dragonite, and let me tell you, Charizard and Dragonite had beef on sight. They had an intense stare down, and to make things worse for Dragonite, Team Rocket comes over and begs Ash to protect them, making Dragonite think that Ash and everyone are friends with Team Rocket, the same people that burnt down Dragonite's home, so he gets even more mad. And honestly, Dragonite is in the right, since the real villains are Team Rocket, but they do end up getting into a battle with Charizard versus Dragonite. It is an extremely intense match. The two of them are flying through the sky, going blow for blow, and Claire even jumps in with her Dragonair trying to help out Ash, but this Dragonite is strong. They even end up doing a bit of a 3v1 against this Pokemon, using the move Thunder against Dragonite, and Charizard used Fire Spin to block Dragonite's Hyper Beam. All of this was getting Dragonite so mad that he just ended up shooting another Hyper Beam at everyone, and it ended up hurting himself, and he fell into the lake. Everyone thought the battle was over and that Charizard defeated Dragonite, but this Pokemon ended up emerging from the lake even madder than ever, until Dragonite stopped seeing red and realized he caused so much destructive damage in his tantrum, and he felt so guilty he even started crying and wanting to replant all the trees. In the end, everything was fine, and more importantly, Ash's Charizard won against a pseudo-legendary. And in the next episode, Ash decided to challenge Claire and added Charizard onto his team to see if they can get their 8th gym badge. And when this final battle began, it was against Charizard versus Dragonair, and Charizard was at a major disadvantage. Dragonair had the entire water terrain to hide and bob and weave in, while Charizard was just stuck taking all the attacks. Charizard ended up shooting a flamethrower at Dragonair, but it was just hiding in the water and came out shooting a Hyper Beam, but Charizard reacted quickly and was able to block it with the flamethrower. Then Ash's Charizard did some stuff I thought I would never see, because he decided to burn all the water with his fire, evaporating it so that Dragonair couldn't be hiding anymore. Dragonair started to panic since it was exposed and hit Charizard in the face, but Charizard kept a calm mind, grabbed the Dragonair by the tail, and flew up in the sky to use the move Seismic Toss. And when you see this moon on the screen, you know the enemy Pokemon is dead. This deadass has to be Charizard's dramatic finish or something. Pokemon Company, take notes if you're making a fighting game, because Charizard flew all the way down with Dragonair, bashing its skull into the ground, and he won the battle, winning Ash his 8th and final gym badge of the Johto region. Everything was really looking up for Ash and Charizard. They have came a long way, and there was really only one thing left to do in this region: compete in the Pokemon League, and Ash brought along Charizard. Ash was doing really great in this tournament. It was a lot better than the Indigo League, and he managed to get right up before the semi-finals, fighting Gary, his longtime rival. Their battle was pretty close, and Ash was down to his last Pokemon, Charizard, while Gary still had Golem and Blastoise. Charizard knew everything was on the line here, especially if he wanted to make up for his previous league performance. And it really showed, since Charizard used Dragon Rage against Golem, defeating it and leaving it down to a 1v1 between Blastoise and him. It was really clear throughout this battle that Charizard did not have the advantage, since Gary's Blastoise was going crazy, blasting a Hydro Pump and hitting Charizard a bunch, and Charizard could barely fight back. Charizard tried to fly in the air to catch a break and try to hit Blastoise, but Blastoise just kept using Hydro Pump, shooting at Charizard, and it sucks since Blastoise had protection from the entire arena, since it was made of rocks and it was blocking all the fire. Everybody, including myself, really thought Charizard was done for, until Ash thought of the smartest idea ever. Charizard decided to use Flamethrower on the ground, making it extremely hot, to the point where the arena is boiling and Blastoise couldn't stand, and when Blastoise used its water to try to cool it off, it just created a bunch of steam. And during all this confusion, it was Charizard's time to shine because he was able to maneuver within the mist to get up close and personal to have hand-to-hand combat with Blastoise. Charizard used the move Dragon Rage right in his face, but Blastoise tucked himself into his shell to dodge the attack. But then Ash told Charizard to use his signature move, Seismic Toss. He started flying Blastoise up into the air, and Blastoise knew he was cooked. He started biting onto Charizard's shoulder, but it was already too late because the Moon Earth animation started playing, and we all know how the story goes. Charizard slammed this Pokemon into the ground, knocking out Blastoise and being victorious, beating Gary in the Pokemon League tournament. Ash was so proud of his Pokemon and his team, especially his Charizard, and even Gary was impressed and didn't trash talk Ash, being completely humble and acknowledging Ash and Charizard as really strong trainers. Ash did manage to advance to the semifinals against his trainer known as Harrison, and this matchup was really good for Charizard. The highlight of it was Blaziken versus Charizard. They were going head to head and everything was on the line here, using a bunch of hand-to-hand combat and shooting fire attacks at each other. The battle was looking pretty even, and then Ash commanded Charizard to use the move Seismic Toss, and this time when Charizard used Seismic Toss, it was different. The special animation with the moon, sun, stars, and the universe colliding did not play, and Blaziken was able to stand up, and he used Flamethrower while Charizard used Dragon Rage, and when the smoke cleared, Charizard unfortunately lost the battle, and Blaziken was the winner. Even though Ash did get eliminated from the Johto tournament, this was way better of a run than the Indigo League, really showing how far Charizard has come. But the highlight of Charizard's career is in the next season, the Hoenn region, because for a while, Ash didn't have Charizard on his team, but when things were getting serious in the Battle Frontier, he reunites with Charizard to fight against his first legendary Pokemon one-on-one, Articuno, and this battle was pure hype, because we've been following this character's journey from all the way where he's a Charmander, and now he is literally rivaling legendary Pokemon. For a majority of the battle though, Articuno is getting a lot of good hits in. Even though they are trading blows, Articuno manages to freeze Charizard's wings, sending him flying to the ground, and then Articuno starts cheating by using the terrain to create icicle shards attacking Charizard. But this isn't a problem for Charizard because when he starts flying, he makes his body temperature so hot, all the ice from his body starts to melt off. These two Pokemon end up clashing Flamethrower and Dragon Breath, and then Articuno seems like it's going to win, going in for a Steel Wing. But if you know anything about our Charizard, you don't want to be in close quarters with him because he grabs this chicken and uses Seismic Toss, even though the animation did not play here, and slams Articuno onto the ground. It actually looked like Charizard injured himself here because Articuno was the only one standing up, but they were just pulling a classic bait and switch because Articuno ended up falling to the ground and Charizard rose, defeating a legendary Pokemon one-on-one. Ash did manage to use Charizard a little more throughout this season, but this was the main highlight, and the final major battle in Charizard's career is all the way in the Unova season, because basically Ash is reminiscing because he sees a Charmander and starts thinking about his Charizard. So he ends up calling over his boy, and when Iris's Dragonite sees Ash's Charizard, he gets super jealous. Since for a while Dragonite was like the alpha of the group, and now this big Charizard comes and completely steals his flow, so he's pretty angry. Ash decides to challenge Iris to a battle to determine which dragon is the strongest, and the match began. Both of these two Pokemon used Flamethrower against each other, but it didn't really do much damage. Charizard and Dragonite flew up in the sky chasing each other and trying to get a good hit in. And for the Pokemon Black and White anime, the animation is pretty good. Charizard uses Wing Attack to counteract Dragonite's Thunder Punch, which results in a stalemate. Dragonite gets pretty mad and uses his ultimate attack, Dragon Rush, but our Charizard does not care, rushing right into it with the slash. It created a massive amount of smoke, and Iris thought she had won the battle, saying that her Dragonite is strong, but our Charizard emerged without a single scratch. And Iris should not have talked trash here because this made our Charizard really mad and wanting to end the battle. So Charizard goes ahead and charges up a super effective Dragon Tail. Dragonite realizes if he gets hit by this, he's done for and tries to run away, but Charizard speed blitzes him all the way up in the sky and slams Dragonite onto the ground, defeating the Pokemon and winning the battle. Well, technically the battle ended ended up stopping midway, but Charizard was clearly winning. It was clear from this point on that Charizard was one of Ash's strongest Pokemon ever. He stayed around a bit for the Unova Saga, but eventually left and wasn't ever a central part on Ash's team again. He did make a cameo return in Pokemon Journeys with the rest of the Kanto starters, but overall, Charizard's journey concludes around here while Ash is still traveling around the region wherever Ash is. This story really does show how far Charizard did rise from being an abused Charmander to being a powerhouse on Ash's team. The next powerful ace Ash had was Sceptile, and if you're wondering why he didn't have one in the Johto region, that was basically Charizard.
So this adventure starts off in the Hoenn region.
Ash and the gang are lost in the forest, and they end up arguing and finding a group of Tricos. Ash tries to catch them, but he fails, so him and May start chasing after them, but then Ash ends up falling into a hole. At the bottom of this hole, Ash ends up seeing a giant tree which is withering away and dying, and at the top of this tree lies a Trico. And I won't even lie, this Trico must think he's a nonchalant dreadhead or something, or maybe even Sanji or Spike, because he's just chilling up top, lighting up his cigarette, twig, and immediately wants smoke with Ash and Pikachu. When he makes it down to the bottom, he ends up one-shotting Pikachu, and when Ash and Pikachu were really about to show this Trico what's up, the Elder Trico came over and broke up the fight, and came over and said, "Hey, me boy, it's not nice to attack people randomly. This is a peaceful village full of peaceful people, and—
Shut up! Trico ended up crashing out on his elder for telling him to calm down. And to be honest, this is exactly what I mean about every single one of Ash's ace Pokemon needing a therapist, because they all seem to crash out whenever they get angry. Trico and the elder still end up continuing their conversation, and basically what they were saying is that Trico wants to stay and protect the dying tree because it's their home, but the elder was saying that it's time to give it up and all things die and it's time to move on, and maybe Trico could go on a Pokemon journey with a trainer. Trico gets pretty overwhelmed from all this information since he really doesn't want to let this place go, and he ends up going away and hiding in his home. Ash recognized that Trico was going through a lot, so he decided to stay by Trico's side and observe him from the tree and not leave him until he knows everything's okay. Ash ends up figuring out that throughout the night, Trico has been going out and secretly gathering resources trying to replant the tree to get it healthy back to its original state. Since Ash saw how passionate Trico was about this, he ended up helping him, actually gathering the same resources and trying to revive this tree. Trico actually gained a lot of respect for Ash because he didn't think humans could be this noble. Then one day when they were walking back trying to get more resources, they noticed Team Rocket did their usual shenanigans, stealing all the Tricos, and Pikachu, Ash, and Trico made quick work of Team Rocket and saved all the other Tricos. After all this, Trico ended up gaining back the respect of his fellow peers, but unfortunately due to all the commotion of this battle, ended up destroying the tree, splitting it in half. But this actually wasn't a bad thing, since a seed came out of the tree and Trico realized that seeds plant and bring new life, so that they could just plant another seed and grow an even bigger tree in the future. And with that, Trico was no longer attached to the dying tree and planted a new one, and he even challenged Ash to a battle, and if Ash won, he would go along with Ash on the journey. Ash and Pikachu ended up winning and catching Trico, adding him onto the team. And at first, everything seemed fine. Ash was happy to get such a powerful Pokemon onto his team, but there were many untapped issues that we would have to deal with later. In future episodes, Ash was training his Pokemon to prepare for their first gym battle at the Rustboro gym to verse the Rock-type gym leader, except there was one main problem. Trico, the grass-type Pokemon that would normally be amazing for this gym, knew absolutely zero grass-type moves. This Trico literally only knows how to box and doesn't think about using his elemental typing at all. And unfortunately, when the battle began, Trico stood no chance. He was getting completely bullied by a Geodude, and he even got knocked out. And if it wasn't for Pikachu clutching up the gym battle, they would have lost. So you would think with all this, Trico would lay his head down, train a bit, and be ready for the next gym, but it was the same rinse and repeat. When they made it to the second gym, yes, Trico got a nice sneak attack on the Machop and knocked him out, but when they ended up versing the ace of the gym, Makuhita, he was giving Trico a run for his money, and Trico couldn't stand any chance. Makuhita even used Seismic Toss, slamming Trico onto the ground, but Trico was still holding on, until this Pokemon decided to evolve in the middle of the battle into Hariyama and just completely destroyed Trico, being outclassed. After this battle, Ash didn't take the loss lightly. He was actually getting pretty disappointed and sad at himself because Trico wasn't living up to the expectations he wanted. He knew Trico had the power to win, he just felt that he was a bad trainer. When the gang tried cheering Ash up, he just got even more mad, told him to shut up,
up and ran away. But then after some reflecting, Ash realized that it wasn't that deep and that all he has to do is lock in with Trico, train a bit, and they'll be able to win the gym battle. So that's exactly what they did. So while they were training, they ended up encountering a Corphish, and Ash decided to test Trico's strength, and Trico did actually pretty well, defeating the Corphish, and Ash caught him, adding him onto the team. With all that being said and done, they thought they were ready for their rematch. So Ash went ahead to rematch Broly to get his second gym badge, and when he started the battle, Trico had some extreme speed, completely blitzing the Machop, and Ash actually did something pretty smart by returning Trico and saving him for the ace Pokemon Hariyama. When Hariyama went up against Corphish, he kinda made quick work of him, and it was just left down to the 1v1, Trico versus Hariyama. And the battle was looking actually way better. Trico kept aiming for the feet and attacking this Pokemon since he does all his damage through his feet. Everyone knew that they had to end the battle fast, so they did their one final attack, clashing at each other, but in the end, Trico was the winner and Hariyama fell, granting Ash and Trico their second gym badge. Trico was still struggling to learn a single grass type move 2 gym badges in, so in a future episode they ended up fighting this Grovyle, and he was using the move Bullet Seed. Trico ended up challenging him to a battle, and in the end Trico learned a little bit on how to use Bullet Seed, but he didn't really master it and ultimately ended up losing. Ash noticed after this defeat Trico was a little down since he couldn't use the move Bullet Seed, so while they were eating watermelon, Pikachu and Ash put the seeds in their mouths, spat it at Trico, and that got him so mad to the point where he mastered the move Bullet Seed. I mean, hey, if it works, right? Later on their adventure, they ended up finding a trainer that had a Loudred, and they also challenged him to a battle so Trico could get stronger. And this battle was very close. The Loudred was using a lot of hyper voice attacks against Trico, and Trico was shooting back Bullet Seeds. It was neck and neck. Trico went ahead to try to finish the battle by slamming Loudred into a tree, but then the unthinkable happened. They both started to double evolve. Trico evolved into Grovyle and Loudred evolved into Exploud. And Grovyle ended up learning his signature move because he evolved Leaf Blade, even cutting down a tree. They still wanted to continue the battle, but then Exploud started tweaking out and running away for some reason, but Grovyle was not going to let that slide, so he started chasing after them. They went all the way deep into the woods to continue this match, and Grovyle was completely winning, and if it wasn't for Team Rocket doing their usual shenanigans, interrupting the fight, Grovyle would have definitely won, but we never got a clear winner. At face value, it looks like Grovyle was a brand new Pokemon with cool new moves and a badass look, but little did everybody know this was about to be the beginning of the biggest downfall in a Pokemon's career. At the start of Grovyle's run though, he actually did pretty amazing. When Ash went up against Norman, it was down to Grovyle versus Slacking, and at first Grovyle was getting absolutely destroyed, but Grovyle locked in and actually showed everyone his new ability, Overgrowth, which is basically like a bootleg version of Infernape's Blaze, but it boosts Grovyle's power and he basically has Ultra Instincts, because when this ability is activated, Grovyle just doesn't lose, and he knocked out Norman's ace Pokemon, earning Ash the 5th gym badge. And for some reason, Ash winning this battle pissed Max off so badly that he stole Ash's gym badge and locked himself into a room crying over it, because he was secretly Ash's biggest hater and did not want him to win the gym battle because that would mean Ash is stronger than Max's dad. Eventually, Max calmed down and gave Ash his gym badge, but Grovyle's gotta be careful because he's got literal haters amongst him. For the next bit of Ash's journey, Grovyle was proving why he was the ace of the team because he helped Ash get the rest of the 8 gym badges that he needed so that he can now compete in the Hoenn League. In the first round, Ash was up against his celebrity type figure named Clark, and he sent out Charizard and Quilava, and for some reason Ash decided to send out Grovyle and Glalie. Even with the type disadvantage, it was pretty obvious that Ash was on top because Grovyle was moving so fast and used Pound and knocked out Quilava. But after that, out of nowhere, the Charizard came coming in with the wing attack and knocked out Grovyle, leaving the battle down to a 1v1 between Glalie and Charizard. But in the end, Glalie ended up clutching up by making a bunch of shadow clones of himself, and then he ended up headbutting the Charizard into an icicle, knocking him out. Because of all this, Ash was able to advance to the top 8, and he ended up versing his friend Tyson, and they were fighting for a spot to make it to the top 4, and the battle was super close. Grovyle ended up versing one of Tyson's strongest Pokemon, Metagross, and this Metagross had a weakness. He had a crack at the top of his head, so Grovyle Grovyle kept spamming attacks hitting it. Even though it seemed like it was working and that it was really weakening Metagross, Grovyle got a little greedy and ended up going in for a Leaf Blade, but got his head bashed in with Meteor Mash, instantly knocking him out. And to be honest, this was a little disappointing because Grovyle worked so hard to make it to the Hoenn League and they weren't really doing that great at all. Grovyle was mediocre at best. And Grovyle's mediocrity truly costed Ash because even though Pikachu came in and was able to knock out Metagross, in the end they got eliminated from Tyson's Meowth since Pikachu was so low since he already had to fight a pseudo-legendary. With all that being said, Ash got eliminated from the Hoenn League and they were pretty sad about this, but they wanted to train up so they would be able to fight the Battle Frontier. And whatever training they planned on doing clearly just didn't work because when they went to fight the Battle Frontier, Grovyle went up against Greta's Hariyama, and Hariyama was completely obliterating Grovyle. He's been on the biggest losing streak of all time so far. Grovyle seemed like he was making a comeback and actually got a few good hits in, evening up the battle, but in the end it was just completely useless because Grovyle got knocked out by Hariyama's Ice Punch throwing the battle, and then if it wasn't for Ash's Snorlax they would have lost. Grovyle was becoming so useless that the only thing that could possibly save him is hitting that subscribe button. Seriously, it would mean the absolute world to me, and we're getting pretty close to 100k, so hit the subscribe button for Sceptile. Even though Grovyle's career was on a massive decline, him and his group went to the forest and had a nice chill picnic until they realized they invaded a Tropius' territory. Nurse Joy even came over with her Meganium warning them all to leave, but Grovyle for some reason felt some type of way and wanted to fight Royal Pair. I guess Grovyle's ego was hurt and wanted to prove something in front of the ladies and fight the Tropius, but it just didn't work again and he got his ass beat. It got so bad that Meganium had to jump into the mix and stare down Tropius like, "Babe, this isn't you. Don't do this. Stop it." With all that going on, they were able to bring Grovyle to the Pokemon Center and Meganium was able to heal Grovyle. And even though Grovyle's supposed to be in his gym arc and locking in, he ended up falling in love with Meganium. And like they say, love makes you do dumb stuff because after Grovyle got healed, he went immediately back to challenge Royal Pair for round 2. In Grovyle's mind, he thought that if he beat the Tropius, he would be able to gain the love of Meganium, and even though it doesn't work like that, in Grovyle's heart, he thinks it does. When their battle began, all Grovyle could think about was Meganium, so that made him lock in, get super speed, and was able to sneak up on the Tropius and get a massive hit in. Then, before the Tropius could even react, Grovyle went down and slashed him with Leaf Blade, defeating the Tropius in front of Meganium's eyes. And in Grovyle's mind, he had it all. He got the girl, he defeated the big bad Tropius, and he was finally gonna get with Meganium. Until he realized that he just wasn't that guy and Meganium ran right past him to go to Tropius. Now, I didn't know Pear had Riz like this, but him and Meganium were cuddling up and this completely devastated Grovyle, knocking him all the way to the ground and he was just heartbroken. In the distance, Team Rocket came over and stole Meganium and Tropius, and Grovyle's heartbreak hurt him so badly that he evolved into Sceptile to save everyone. And that's what I would like to say, but in reality, Sceptile was so heartbroken he couldn't do anything. He couldn't use any moves and he even got defeated by Seviper. If Pikachu didn't come over, who knows what would have happened. In the end, even though Grovyle was able to evolve, he was more in a worse state than he was in the beginning since he was just destroyed mentally. He couldn't use any moves and he's been on a major losing streak. He just felt like he was completely useless. And even Ash took notice of this and Nurse Joy told Ash that Sceptile would definitely just need some time. And Nurse Joy couldn't have been more wrong because Sceptile from this point forward was not able to use any moves at all. This was really beating him up mentally because Sceptile just became useless. Ash tried to cheer him up and all the other Pokemon, but this still taxed Sceptile mentally, so he crashed out. He ran away from the group. Since a lot of things weren't going right for Sceptile, being on a losing streak, losing the love of his life, and now he can't even use any moves, he started slamming his head against the tree repeatedly. Sceptile was genuinely going down one of the biggest depressive spirals in the Pokemon franchise. And even when Ash found Sceptile and tried to talk him out of this, Ash's emotional immaturity wasn't really helping since he was just telling Sceptile Sceptile everything was gonna get better, but deep inside Sceptile did not feel better. All this commotion ended up causing a group of Beedrills to come around them and jump them. The gang tried running away, but then the Beedrills ended up knocking them into the river, and Pikachu got separated from Ash and Sceptile, and they all went down the stream. When Ash and Sceptile got out of the river, they went on a search party looking for Pikachu, and during this time, Ash and Sceptile started bonding and really talking it out. And that night, Ash told Sceptile that he'll always be there for them and be his ultimate support unit, and Sceptile then realized that he will always be there for Ash and that he actually has good people around him and he should try to look towards a brighter future. The next day, Ash and Sceptile were walking through the woods, ended up dealing with their Beedrill problem, met up with Pikachu again, but then Team Rocket ended up taking Ash's Pikachu and Sceptile. While they were flying away on their blimp, Ash developed super strength and ended up jumping up onto Team Rocket's blimp, but then Team Rocket sent out their Pokemon shooting bullet seeds at Ash, trying to make him fall down a canyon and really kill him. They eventually did a final hit on Ash, trying to knock him down and kill him, and then Sceptile ended up reawakening his powers using Leaf Blade, cutting up Team Rocket's device and saving Ash. With all that being said, Sceptile was finally back to his full power, and Ash was so happy about this that they even used him to challenge the rest of the battle frontier. Sceptile ended up versing Spencer's Shiftry and winning the battle, getting him the next badge, and Sceptile even went on a greater historical run in the Pokemon Rangers movie by being fast enough to catch up to Deoxys and fight him. And since Sceptile got a taste of legendary Pokemon blood, his next fight was against Brandon's Regirock in the Pokemon Battle Frontier. But this fight was not really fair for Sceptile since Ash ended up getting possessed by the King of Pokelantis, and he was just telling Sceptile to do all these crazy cruel attacks. But I'll touch more on Ash getting possessed in a later video, so subscribe for that. In the end, Ash ended up losing the battle, but in the end it doesn't really count on Sceptile's record in my opinion, since Pikachu and Sceptile were just trying to snap Ash out of being possessed. For the rest of the Hoenn region, Sceptile didn't have any more downfalls. The next notable thing that he did was end up fighting Maze Blaziken in a Pokemon contest, but they ended up tying and splitting the ribbon. After that, Ash kind of ended his journey with Sceptile in the Hoenn League, but that wasn't the end of Sceptile's story. It was actually leading up to his biggest feat yet, the Sinnoh Pokemon League. In this league, Ash actually advanced pretty far, and he ended up making it to the semi-finals, versing a trainer known as Tobias. And let me tell you, this trainer is no joke because its starting Pokemon that he sent out was a Darkrai, and this Pokemon definitely lives up to its status because when Ash sent out his first Pokemon Heracross, he legitimately got put to sleep and then got one-shotted. The same thing happened to Ash's Torkoal. He was fodder. He got tossed around by Darkrai and eliminated too. Ash sent out Gible in a desperate attempt to do anything, but then Darkrai destroyed Gible too. Ash was so desperate since he worked so hard to make it to this point in the league, so we put it all on Sceptile to verse the Darkrai. Darkrai started off the battle by shooting an Ice Beam, but Sceptile dodged it and used Quick Attack, but then Darkrai dodged it as well. Sceptile tried to use Leaf Storm against the Darkrai, but Darkrai was faster than him and used Ice Beam, hitting Sceptile head on. And when Sceptile was hit down, Darkrai didn't pull any punches because he used Dark Void, putting Sceptile to sleep. Then Darkrai went in to use Dream Eater, an attack that invades a Pokemon's dreams while they're sleeping and heals Darkrai in the process. This was going to be devastating against Sceptile, but Ash was the light at the end of Sceptile's tunnel and managed to get to Sceptile's consciousness, waking him up so he didn't get hurt by Dream Eater. Tobias was completely caught off guard because this has never happened before, a Pokemon waking up mid Dream Eater, and Sceptile used this to his advantage because he went in to use Leaf Storm, charging up both of his blades and got the cleanest hit on Darkrai. Because of this hit, Sceptile had finally done it. Darkrai fell to the ground, getting eliminated. Sceptile was the first one of Ash's Pokemon ever to defeat a legendary Pokemon. The next Pokemon Tobias decided to send out was a literal Latios, so this guy must have had a Game Shark or something, being able to hack in all these legendary Pokemon, but unfortunately Sceptile got one-shotted by Latios. In the end, Pikachu was able to knock out the Latios, but they ended up getting double KO'd, so Ash ended up losing the Sinnoh League. But Sceptile still had one of the greatest feats ever, being able to live to tell the tale that he defeated a legendary Pokemon. With all that being said, Sceptile's journey kind of comes to an end there. He did make a few appearances in Pokemon Journeys to end up training Ash's Surfetch, but he never had a pivotal fighting role again on the team. In the end though, this story shows how even when Sceptile was at the lowest point possible, he was able to rise to the occasion and be able to defeat legendary Pokemon. And even though Sceptile's story ends in the Sinnoh region, the ace of the Sinnoh region is Infernape, one of Ash's best star Pokemon. When Chimchar was a wild Pokemon, he feared for his life. One day, a group of Zangoose were trying to jump him over territory, and Paul ended up seeing this.
Yo, boys over here, let's get his ass. I found him, we found him.
I'm sorry, guys, I won't do it again. Please just leave me alone. I want to go home.
Even though the Zangoose already beat up Chimchar, they still wanted blood, and they cornered Chimchar to the edge of a cliff. Paul decided to tag along and not help Chimchar, watching him about to get massacred, and when all hope seemed lost, Chimchar tapped into his hidden power, surrounding himself in fire and being able to wipe out all of the Pokemon in an instant. Paul saw all of this go down, and let me tell you, he was the worst person to see it. Because the thing about Paul is, he isn't a new trainer, he just got off a 3-tournament losing streak, and he's looking for a new ace, so when he saw Chimchar, his eyes lit up like a cloud chaser.
I knew I had to have Chimchar for myself.
Paul proceeds to approach Chimchar and puts on a masterclass manipulator performance, making Chimchar believe he wants to join Paul's team. And with that, little did Chimchar know he was signing up for a life of hell. Fast forwarding some time, Ash Ketchum finally arrives in the Sinnoh region, and he ends up catching his first Pokemon, Starly. While Starly is vibing and flying around, a random Pokeball gets thrown at him, and we get introduced to Paul, trying to capture Ash's Pokemon. When Ash goes ahead and questions why Paul did this, Paul starts cussing Ash out, saying that he doesn't even want his weak Starly anyways, and that he should release it to get a stronger one. This obviously doesn't sit right with Ash, since he tries to love and care for each of his Pokemon. Then Paul goes ahead and flexes that he has multiple Starlies and releases the 2 worst ones. Ash is super shocked since he's never seen a trainer like this. I mean, Gary was bad, but we'll talk about him another day. All of this led up to Ash and Paul beefing, and they challenged each other to a 3-on-3 battle. Ash sent out Apom, and Paul decided to send out Chimchar, and they were vibing pretty well. Apom used Double Team to try to avoid some of Chimchar's attacks, but Chimchar ended up using Ember. The battle was getting pretty close, and Paul told Chimchar to go in for a Flame Wheel, but Apom ended up dodging it, hitting Chimchar directly, and Apom won the battle. Everything seemed fine until...
You're still just as useless as can be.
And damn, if Paul is saying this over a friendly battle, I wonder what would happen if Chimchar lost a big competition. After this, Ash and Paul went their separate ways, and eventually they challenged each other to a rematch, where it was Chimchar versus Turtwig. Chimchar was actually doing pretty well, completely decimating Turtwig, and when the battle was about to end, Team Rocket ended up interrupting it, and Ash, Paul, Chimchar, and Turtwig got separated from the rest of the group. This gave Ash some time to bond with Paul, to see that maybe he's a good guy, and they just started off on the wrong foot. But nope, Paul is an absolute asshole and wants nothing to do with Ash. A wild Ursaring ends up attacking Ash, and Chimchar ends up defeating it, and then Paul catches it, adding it onto his team, and after they get out of this entire situation, their battle continues with Turtwig versus Chimchar. This fight, Chimchar was locked in because he didn't want to get beat by Paul if he lost, and he ended up burning Turtwig alive, and when Turtwig was trying to use Tackle, Chimchar ended up charging his Flame Wheel up and absolutely destroyed Turtwig, winning the battle. Ash was super disappointed that he lost to Paul, and you would think that Paul would be happy that they won. But even when Chimchar was celebrating, Paul told Chimchar that being pathetic is nothing to be happy about, and that he is still useless. Ash and the gang are sick of hearing all of this and call out Paul for being rude to Chimchar, and Paul goes ahead and says,
Nice to who? I wouldn't know what else to say to a loser.
What?
So it's pretty clear that Paul is only using Chimchar to try to tap into his secret ability and does not care about this Pokemon at all. And after this, Ash and Paul went their separate ways for a while. Paul started to realize that Chimchar got super powerful because of his ability Blaze, which makes him become strong at low HP. So he started purposely trying to injure Chimchar to activate this ability. In his first gym battle, he literally used Chimchar as a meat shield to try to get him to use Blaze. Surprisingly, it ended up working in this battle, and Chimchar got the boost of power, but he wasn't any match since he didn't have the type advantage in this gym battle, and ultimately Chimchar ended up losing. And you should know the script by now. Paul is pissed off. You can just see the anger in his eyes, and he's not even trying to hide it anymore.
Chimchar, I'll deal with you later.
Bro, I don't even want to know what Paul means by this, but we all know Chimchar is cooked, so 1 sub equals 1 prayer for Chimchar, and what are you waiting for? Click the subscribe button to save Chimchar's life. The next time we see Paul and Chimchar, they're in a fight against Cynthia, the champion of the Sinnoh League, and her ace Pokemon Garchomp. And my man Paul, it gets to a point. Chimchar is like level 10 max, and Garchomp is level 60. It is like you are setting him up for failure, and surprise, surprise, Chimchar ends up brutally losing this battle, and Paul cusses out Chimchar. Ash ends up seeing all of this and thinks Paul absolutely does not get it. He needs to form a bond with Chimchar. After the battle, Cynthia ends up healing Paul's Chimchar and tells Paul that he's a pretty good trainer, but he needs to go easier on his Pokemon. Ash ends up agreeing and tells Paul that he's going too far and he's treating them like garbage. They end up getting into a fight where Paul says that he wants to get strong by any means necessary. Ash goes ahead and asks Paul why won't he be nice to his Pokemon, and just listen to Paul's reasoning.
Why don't you care about your Pokemon?
Cause then they'll get spoiled, and Chimchar's the perfect example of exactly what I mean.
Cynthia chimes in and tells Paul and Ash to go for a walk, and while they're discussing this on their walk, Chimchar ends up getting captured by Team Rocket. This is nothing out of the ordinary, and Paul ends up saving Chimchar, but it's what happens afterwards which is completely insane. Paul was calling Chimchar a bunch of names like worthless and useless, and it was getting so bad that Cynthia had to jump in and tell Paul to stop. Cynthia started comforting Chimchar, saying that it's okay and Chimchar shouldn't have to take this level of abuse. Cynthia tells Paul he should relax and spend the night at the Pokemon Center so he can calm down. Later on, there's this tag team tournament, and Ash ends up getting Paul assigned as his partner. When Ash asks Paul why he even enters this tournament in the first place, he says it's to power up Chimchar. Dawn, Brock, and Ash all know what this means. Paul just wants Chimchar to get injured badly. The battle was Rhyhorn and Magmar versus Pikachu and Chimchar, and it wasn't looking good. Paul was absolutely throwing. Chimchar managed to clutch up, and Ash and Paul won the battle, but Ash pressed Paul, wondering why he's trying to throw the match and just get Chimchar injured. Paul tells Ash to just stay out of his way, and they're gonna move on to the next round, which is the next day. While Ash is training with his Pokemon at night, preparing for the next round, they see something in the distance. As they end up approaching it, they end up seeing one of the craziest scenes in the Pokemon anime. Paul is getting all of his Pokemon to absolutely jump Chimchar for losing the match. Paul claims this is special training and a punishment for Chimchar not activating its Blaze ability. The worst part is when Ash has enough and asks Chimchar what he thinks about all this, Chimchar wants this. Paul has tricked Chimchar into believing this is the only way to getting strong. I have never seen a Pokemon trainer psychologically mess up a Pokemon to this degree. Chimchar needs a therapist. Paul continues to beat down on Chimchar, getting all of his Pokemon to hurt him, and Chimchar even realizes that this is way too much. But Paul doesn't care, and he tells Elekid to blast Chimchar with the final attack, and Ash's Pikachu ends up jumping in the way, saving Chimchar. This Pokemon is now in critical condition, and Ash ends up rushing him to the hospital, and after they end up healing Chimchar, it's heavily advised that Chimchar doesn't fight anymore. So at the next day in the tournament, Paul decides to use Chimchar as the star Pokemon. The worst part is Chimchar is up against a Zangoose, the same group of Pokemon that jumped him not too long ago, so it's just a bad day for him overall. The Pokemon Ash is using is Turtwig, and the battle's going okay, but they're losing a bit. When Zangoose was about to go do the finishing blow on Chimchar, Ash's Turtwig jumps in the way and saves Chimchar. Then here Paul saw an opportunity. Like the menace he was, he told Chimchar to use Flame Wheel into Turtwig and Zangoose. Ash was completely shocked his teammate is trying to hurt him again, and when the enemy Zangoose tried to finish off Turtwig with a Fire Blast, Chimchar had enough. He ended up jumping in the way and also saving Ash's Turtwig. This got Paul really angry since he didn't think Chimchar was a weakling, and he stopped commanding Chimchar after this. Paul forfeited the battle. He didn't care anymore, and it was up to Ash to command Turtwig and Chimchar, and even though they won, Paul was pretty angry. Outside of the tournament, Paul decided to release Chimchar. He said he didn't care about him anymore and he's just going to get a new fire type, and this broke Chimchar. He was so confused he didn't understand why Paul was letting him go. He was trying his best. Ash and the gang heard all of this and questioned why Paul was even doing this, but Paul just left. He didn't care, and
Chimchar was completely sad. He was a wild Pokemon without a trainer or a purpose anymore. And then Ash decided to ask Chimchar if he wants to join his team instead. Chimchar accepted the invitation, and from there he was a prime member on Ash's team. You would think it's all good now since Chimchar has a good trainer, but the story only gets so much more complicated. You see, the next day when Ash was chilling, he was training Chimchar, trying to get him stronger and help him out. While Chimchar was watching everybody have fun and support each other, Chimchar was having flashbacks about his life with Paul, and he was shocked that training could actually be fun. Chimchar has never had friends like this before or a support unit, so he didn't know how to act. It didn't feel right. Later on in the day, Ash's Chimchar was sparring against Dawn's Piplup. Piplup was taking this like a casual match, but Chimchar looked like he was fighting for his life. Chimchar ended up losing this sparring match, and the second he lost, he started showing severe signs of PTSD. He remembered what happened the last time he lost the battle. He got released. Chimchar didn't want to experience that again, and Chimchar started to break down. Ash noticed this was all going on, and he reassured to Chimchar that he's not going to leave him even if he loses or wins, and that he likes Chimchar for him. Brock, Dawn, and all the other Pokemon were cheering Chimchar on, letting him know that they are there for him, and Chimchar started to cry and break down since he never was able to show his emotions before. Later that night, Chimchar was having nightmares about the Zangoose that beat him up and about Paul being completely rude to him, so Chimchar needed to take a walk to get his mind off it, and he ended up meeting up with Meowth. Him and Meowth ended up talking, and Meowth gave Chimchar some pretty good advice, letting him know his past doesn't define him and that he should look towards the future. Chimchar appreciated and fully understood Meowth's words, and honestly, Team Rocket is really underrated because Meowth has seemed to be the therapist for every single fire-type Pokemon that Ash has. Conveniently, the next day, Team Rocket and a bunch of Ash's Pokemon were getting attacked by Zangoose, and Chimchar was the only one that was able to save them. When Ash went to command Chimchar, he was really scared. He didn't want to fight the Zangoose, but Ash reassured Chimchar again that everything will be okay, and Chimchar was able to overcome his fear, saving all of his friends from the Zangoose. With all that being said, it started to look pretty good for Chimchar. He was locked in helping Ash with a bunch of battles, but then he ended up bumping into Paul. Paul's Elekid evolved into an Electabuzz, and Paul was talk trashing Ash as usual, so they got into a battle. In this fight, Chimchar was versing Paul's Ursaring, and Ursaring was completely destroying Chimchar, until Chimchar reached a boiling point, and his ability Blaze activated from his rage. His eyes was glowing red, and his aura was just different. He did one-shot Paul's Ursaring, but the battle got postponed since Chimchar was going crazy, attacking everyone and burning down the forest. It got so bad that Chimchar even bit Ash, but Ash was still staying calm and told Chimchar that it's going to be fine, and Chimchar managed to calm down. Even though everything was fine, everyone was wondering, why did Chimchar go berserk? In the past, when he used Blaze, this never happened, so this is completely new. We learned that even though Ash is being a good trainer to Chimchar, he needs time to overpack everything he's been through, so that's why he only sees red. Later on, Ash and Paul rematched their battle, and it's the fated match, the biggest rivalry in this series, to be honest. Ash's Chimchar versus Paul's Electabuzz. Because in Chimchar's eyes, Electabuzz was always treated like the golden child while Chimchar was treated like garbage, so Chimchar really wants to win this. When the battle first starts, Chimchar goes in for an attack, but Paul switches out Electabuzz. Chimchar is forced to go up against Ursaring, and they're having a pretty intense battle. Even though this battle seemed close, Chimchar was built different. He got a major attack off on Ursaring, and he knocked him out, causing Chimchar to finally get his revenge on this bear, and he evolved into Monferno. Monferno wasn't playing any games anymore. He learned the move Mach Punch, and he was moving like Ultra Instinct Goku, just thrashing around Electabuzz. You could tell that he was finally on par, and this was the boost of power that he needed. Electabuzz managed to get a sneak attack Thunder off on Monferno, and they both knew they needed to end this battle quickly. When both of their final attacks collided, after the smoke cleared, Monferno fell on the ground. He ended up losing the battle. Even though it was disappointing they lost, Ash and Monferno knew that they've gotten stronger, and one day they'll get their get back against Paul. Later on, when Ash and Monferno were sparring against a trainer, Team Rocket did their usual shenanigans and interrupted the fight and captured everybody. It was up to Monferno to try to help Ash and the gang be set free.
But because of the damage Monferno took, he was just like Naruto, going into his Ninetales Rage form and just seeing red. Paul was in the area trying to help out from Monferno's mass destruction, and Ash was trying to calm down Monferno, but all the damage this Pokemon caused almost got Electabuzz crushed. In that moment when all hope seemed lost and all these Pokemon were done for, Monferno was able to control his Blaze ability and protect Electabuzz and Empoleon, and he evolved into his final evolution, Infernape. Infernape's vibe was completely different. He was calm, cool, collected, and strong, and Paul realized this. Paul was completely shocked this Pokemon was able to control its rage, and he said that he's looking forward to versing Ash and Infernape in this Sinnoh League tournament. Ash and Infernape knew everything was on the line here, but they still needed one more gym badge to enter, so they went together to fight the 8th gym leader, Volkner, and the main battle was against Ash's Infernape versus Volkner's Luxray. This battle was pretty even on both sides. These Pokemon were going blow for blow, but then Luxray was able to get an Iron Tail off on Infernape. And then it happened again. Infernape's Blaze ability activated. This Pokemon got up with red eyes, and everyone knew this was the last chance for Infernape to prove himself that he can control this ability before the Sinnoh League. When Ash called out to Infernape, he looked angry. It looked like he was about to fumble and crash out. But then, in the last moment, Infernape showed Ash that he was locked in, able to control this power. Then Infernape used a massive Flame Wheel to knock out Luxray, earning them their final gym badge to enter the Sinnoh League. The league started immediately after this, and Ash and Paul made it to the semi-finals where they were facing off against each other. Paul's Pokemon were completely destroying Ash's because Paul set up toxic spikes, so any Pokemon that Ash brings on the field gets poisoned. When Ash brought out Infernape to verse Greninja, he was instantly poisoned, already at a disadvantage. But Infernape had a plan. He used Dig Underground and then used Flare Blitz under the arena to light the entire thing on fire, burning up all the toxic spikes. Everyone was shocked that a Pokemon could even do this. Paul tried to retaliate by telling his Pokemon to use Giga Drain, and even though it was working, draining Infernape's life force, he locked in and hit Paul's Pokemon, knocking him out. Infernape had taken a bit of damage, so Ash decided to return him for a bit and let his other Pokemon fight Paul's next Pokemon. His ace Electivire was going crazy, running through Ash's team, and it got pretty bad. He knocked out Pikachu, and Ash was down to his last Pokemon, Infernape. But Infernape was still a little injured from earlier. Electivire immediately went in for a Thunder Punch, and Infernape retaliated with the Mach Punch. This attack pushed the both of them back, and when Electivire was charging up his next attack, Infernape was missing because he digged under the ground and he hit Electivire with a sneak attack. Electivire was still standing and it was on sight. These Pokemon were just continuously trading blows. They were completely equal. Infernape got a little greedy, trying to end the battle with the Mach Punch, but then Electivire dodged it, and he ended up grabbing Infernape. This was the chance Electivire needed, and he went all out, shocking Infernape, and it literally looked like a public execution. Everybody knew Infernape was done for, and it looked like the battle was done. Infernape fell to the ground, and the last thing he saw before his vision was about to fade was Paul. Paul was trash-talking Infernape, calling him pathetic and worthless, and he knew this was going to happen. But this was just the motivation Infernape needed to activate his Blaze ability, fully controlled, being able to use it to fight against Electivire. And it was like Infernape was a different Pokemon. He got some major hits in, so Paul knew this battle had to end fast. They both went in to use their final attacks, Flare Blitz and Thunder Punch, which ended up causing a massive explosion. Everyone was waiting to see who the winner was, and then Electivire fell. Infernape was able to get his revenge against Paul and Electivire in the tournament, proving that he wasn't worthless and you can be strong by forming bonds and friendships, not just through brute force. Ash and Pikachu were so happy about how far Infernape has came, and Paul was able to accept this defeat. And with that, Ash advanced to the next round of the tournament, but we won't talk about that massacre. And the season ended off with Ash and Paul saying goodbye to each other, but this isn't the last time we saw Infernape. All the way in Pokemon Journeys, Ash had a Gengar who was basically like the successor to Ash's Fire-type Pokemon, since all of Ash's old Fire-types were training him. One day, when Ash and Infernape were out in the woods, they ended up encountering Paul after all this time. And Paul was a lot more chill now. He challenged Ash to a battle, and Ash's Gengar was at the center of it. Since Infernape had some personal beef with Paul in the past, he made sure to teach Gengar some moves that would help him beat Paul. And Gengar ended up mastering them. When the battle started, Gengar did amazing against Paul's Metagross. He was moving around really fast and Metagross could barely keep up. In the end, Gengar won the battle, and Infernape was so proud of his students. Paul accepted this defeat too, and he fully accepted Infernape as a strong Pokemon. I guess Paul realized Infernape is up now. But speaking of things that are not up now is Ash's Unova team. They all suck except for Krookodile, the one saving grace on Ash's team. So this is the story on how they met. When Ash was chilling and walking around with Iris, they both end up falling into a random sinkhole. And you would think that the Unova region has a fracking issue or something because these holes are all over the place. A little boy comes by and saves them, letting them know that these holes are the results of a group of Sanddiles that are making a bunch of potholes everywhere for no reason. They're even terrorizing his business. They own a spa and people used to chill there all day long, but the Sanddiles attack everybody by creating a bunch of holes for no reason. And I'm not gonna lie, the aftermath of their damage looks crazy. You would think that an earthquake or a gang fight happened in this area. Ash and his Pokemon decide to relax in the hot sand, and maybe if they meet the Sandile, they'll be able to handle the situation and figure out why it's destroying the entire area. And while they're all chilling, Sandile does end up revealing itself and it decides to kidnap Iris's Axew. The gang isn't gonna let this slide and they end up grabbing Sandile, trying to release Axew, and then we learn that this Sandile is the GOAT because when it's cornered, it ends up getting Pikachu and Oshawott in its mouth, stealing the both of these Pokemon and running away. Even Team Rocket tried to steal Pikachu from Sandile, but it didn't work. It actually made it worse for them since Sandile got his gang of crocodiles to bury Team Rocket into a hole. Ash decided to follow Sandile so he could get his Pokemon back, and when we pan over to Pikachu and Oshawott, you would think that they were about to get sacrificed into a geyser. It looks like some sort of Pokemon ritual is going on and these two Pokemon are at the center of it. Right now it looks like Sandile is the big bad guy, but Sandile ends up putting down Pikachu and Oshawott, and the truth gets revealed that this guy is a big softie and wants the best for everybody. He shows Pikachu and Oshawott that the area is dangerous and the geyser is about to explode, which is why he's trying to get everyone to evacuate the area, and that there are some Pokemon that haven't evacuated yet. Ash ends up seeing all this and realizing that Sandile is a good person as well, but it ends up being too late and the geyser ends up exploding. The Pokemon end up thinking pretty quickly to make a ladder of themselves to save everybody, creating a Pokemon ladder, contributing to the Lions versus Pokemon debate, and in the end everyone evacuates, the geyser settles, and everyone can chill at the hot springs, and Ash and the gang are all happy. And Sandile ends up being pretty happy too that he's met some pretty cool trainers. Some time ends up passing with Sandile following Ash in the distance, but in a later episode, we come to find out Sandile may be the biggest menace because for some reason he wants to fight Pikachu in a battle and starts following them around the Unova region. Ash in a later city is just hanging out with a group of kids that are friends with a Trubbish, and this Sandile is a psychopath because he starts digging a hole in front of the kids' treehouse, destroying a bunch of their property so that he can battle Pikachu. Ash isn't really feeling this and he gets randomly attacked by Sandile. The little kids in the area wanted to help Ash out by throwing mud at Sandile, and this was their biggest mistake yet. Sandile said screw them kids and blasted a stone edge right at them, trying to crucify them. And what the hell is up with this Pokemon? This is a red card. Pikachu manages to save the day by blasting off this Sandile, but everybody was really confused on why this Pokemon was so mad at Pikachu and why he has his sunglasses. And we end up learning that the truth about this Sandile and why he's so insecure about his identity isn't so nice, because later on Ash was chilling with Pikachu and they fell into another random hole because Sandile dug it out to isolate these two Pokemon so he could have a 1v1 with Pikachu. Ash still doesn't understand why Sandile wants to fight him so badly, but he's down for the battle. But before it seriously begins, a Ducklet interrupts the fight, and this Ducklet is a super villain. It ends up stealing Sandile's sunglasses, and when Sandile wants them back, Ducklet does not care and dips, running away with the glasses, and Sandile gets really sad and insecure that he doesn't have his shades. Ash ends up comforting this Pokemon and they end up growing a pretty strong bond. Another Ducklet ends up jumping in and stealing Ash's hat, and these guys are like professional gangsters or something. They have a whole base of operations of just people's stolen goods, so I didn't know Ducklets move like this. They try for the rest of the episode to get them back, but these Ducklets are OP, just bodying all of them, and then when Ash walks up to them and tries to act nicely, they start playing the sad Pokemon emotional music in the background where Ash is letting them know that it's wrong to steal, and it looks like a heartwarming moment that actually went right until the Ducklet ends up blasting them with with a water gun because these guys will not fall for that. In the end, Ash, Pikachu, and Sandile realized nothing is going to get through these birds' head, and they ended up beating them in a battle and getting all of their stuff back. Then Sandile ended up challenging Ash and Pikachu for a battle to see who was stronger, and the battle was going pretty well, but in the middle of this fight, Sandile ended up evolving. He was officially now a Krokorok, but Pikachu was still able to beat him, blasting off Krokorok, and the writers kind of didn't put him in the story for a couple of episodes. It was a long time until we saw him again. Krokorok just followed them throughout the entire Unova region, and eventually one episode, Ash ended up capturing him when he ended up fighting Pikachu in a rematch and losing. But now with this Pokemon officially joining the team, it was like the only serious Unova member. I remember anytime Krokorok was in a battle, I knew it was actually getting real, and easily the most significant battle this Pokemon had was up against Iris's Dragonite in a tournament.
When the match began, it wasn't looking good for Krokorok. He was getting shot at by a bunch of flamethrowers and had to dig into the ground to dodge some. And honestly, it makes sense. Dragonite is a pseudo-legendary and Krokorok is just a second stage Pokemon. This Pokemon is not to be slept on though, since he managed to bite Dragonite's tail, and even though Dragonite threw him towards the curb, Krokorok used Stone Edge to push back Dragonite. And this tactic was kind of working, but Dragonite decided to lock in and shoot a flamethrower at Krokorok and then combo him with an Ice Beam. It looks like this Pokemon was completely done for. Iris told Dragonite to finish off Krokorok with the flamethrower, and it looked like Krokorok was out for the count until our boy started to evolve into a Krookodile, the GOAT himself. Krookodile's aura was so potent that the Dragonite started tripping out and didn't want to listen to Iris anymore because it was getting one up. So Ash's Krookodile took this as an advantage to strike Dragonite while he's tripping out and knocking him out in the tournament. Our boy Krookodile is a nonchalant dreadhead. After this battle, Krookodile was pretty cemented as one of Ash's coolest Pokemon and the only serious one on his Unova run, but his most important battle takes place in another tournament. Ash was versing Stefan in the Unova League, and it wasn't looking good for him because honestly his team was trash, except for Krookodile. Palpitoad and this bug got knocked out from their opponent, so it was really just up to Krookodile to carry the tournament, and he did not disappoint. His first match was against Stefan's Liepard, and this Liepard was honestly one of the strongest I've seen. It was using Hyper Beams, Double Team, Shadow Balls. This thing's moveset was maxed. Everyone was concerned if Krookodile would survive this, but this guy stood up tall and used Stone Edge to push back Liepard. He then proceeded to dig into the ground to dodge a Hyper Beam, attacking this Pokemon, and then it finished it off in the most cool way ever, using Dragon Claw to slash it. My guy Krookodile, you are really carrying this season. The final matchup was between Krookodile and Sock, and unfortunately Sock is a fighting type, which means Krookodile has the type disadvantage, but Krookodile does not care. He was holding his own with close combat, and these two were going blow for blow. It was a super intense match, but Stefan told Sock to charge up a Karate Chop, which would have finished off Krookodile until Ash Ketchum told Krookodile to use Aerial Ace, the flying type move. This ground dark Pokemon decides to just jump in the air, steal all the flying type's mojo, and slam Sock in the face with a super effective move that he just pulled out of his ass, to be honest. But nonetheless, it did work. Krookodile won the 1v9, knocking out this Pokemon and proving that he really is Ash's best Pokemon in the Unova tournament. You would think that a Pokemon this strong would be used throughout the tournament, but apparently in the next round, Krookodile was nowhere to be seen in Ash's worst Pokemon League performance yet. And if I spend any more time talking about this battle, I'll seriously get mad, so just know Ash lost the Unova League tournament after he stopped using Krookodile. And honestly, after the Unova League, Krookodile really did take a backseat on Ash's team and didn't have any crazy significant battles, which kind of sucks since it feels like Ash kind of benched his star player, but the Unova season ended pretty soon after, so it wasn't that bad. Overall, Krookodile is one of Ash's more underrated aces, but still very cool nonetheless. And speaking of cool aces, the one everybody has been waiting for, arguably Ash's most popular ace Pokemon, Ash Greninja. With this Pokemon, the writing team was cooking since Greninja was locked in from birth. When Froakie first hatched from his egg, he was already very different from his group. While everyone else was having fun and partying, Froakie just wanted to train and get stronger. At first glance, the other Froakies thought our Froakie was just a little weird and just enjoyed training a lot, but these differences eventually turned into hate. They were so scared of the unknown that they decided to
kick Froakie out of the group, leaving him out in the wild to be all alone. Some time has passed and Froakie has somehow made it to Professor Sycamore's lab, but there's one other issue with this Froakie. Whenever Professor Sycamore gives him out to a brand new trainer, Froakie always ends up getting returned or abandoned by that previous trainer. This is because Froakie believes he has such high potential that he won't let it be wasted by mediocre trainers, so he'll continue waiting at the lab until he finds someone worthy of his power. Some time has passed and that leads us to the first episode of the Pokemon X and Y anime, where Ash is landing into the Kalos region.
And I gotta be honest for a second, this has to be one of Ash's best character designs yet. He looks so mature for his age compared to previous seasons, and this new design is actually quite telling on why Froakie gravitated towards Ash. Because while Ash was walking through the Kalos region, Froakie was following him within the shadows, and when Ash got into a battle with Team Rocket and Pikachu almost got hit by a devastating attack, Froakie jumped in the way, tanking the attack for Pikachu, wanting to help Ash. They ended up defeating Team Rocket, but Froakie was in critical condition, and they rushed him over to the professor's lab. And at this lab, Ash learned the truth. Professor Sycamore told Ash that this Froakie has actually been abandoned by its last trainer and really doesn't trust humans all that much and only wants to be raised by a strong trainer. Ash believed that Froakie was actually a good Pokemon and that he just needed the right opportunity to unlock his true potential, and this was proven even further where Team Rocket stole Professor Sycamore's Garchomp and he started tweaking out, but Froakie in the end ended up saving the day, protecting the Garchomp. Because of all this, Froakie realized Ash's love for Pokemon and realized that Ash would actually be a worthy trainer for him, and Ash thought likewise, and ever since then, Froakie joined Ash's team, being one of his aces. And you would think from here that the story goes smooth sailing, with them becoming the best of friends, but the story actually gets so much more complicated. Since Froakie has actually never worked within a team, he actually struggled a lot with teamwork, especially in the early episodes, where Froakie would not listen to Ash's instructions and always just do what he sees fit. This behavior actually costed Froakie a battle against a Fletchling, destroying his self-confidence because he knew he had the power to win the battle, but he just lost because of his own thoughts. And when Froakie applied this, he became better than ever, being able to defeat this Fletchling in a rematch. And with all that being said and done, Froakie ended up enjoying his time on Ash's team and made some pretty good friends. But what Froakie didn't realize is that he was creating even greater rivals. One of the rivals that were brewing up was this ninja that said Ash's Froakie was actually slow and he had a Frogadier himself, and he said his Frogadier was way more faster and better than Ash's Froakie. Ash didn't take this lightly and challenged him to a battle. And that's when they learned real quick that they are not on top. They got absolutely destroyed. They got beat so bad they were pretty bummed out about it, but the ninja actually offered to train Froakie, which they did. They taught Froakie how to be more agile on water, be more stealth, and overall become a better Pokemon, and they said they'll meet them again and hope that Froakie got him stronger. Taking all this info in, you would think Froakie would put his head down and try to become stronger than that Frogadier, but Froakie actually made a brand new rival on his own team. In a later episode, there was a Hawlucha that Ash wanted to catch, so he sent out Froakie, and they got into a very heated battle, which resulted into a draw. Ash still ended up catching Hawlucha, but Froakie just didn't want to work with Hawlucha, and Hawlucha did not respect Froakie at all. Ash even took them out in a double battle, and they completely lost it, bickering against each other and did not work together. Ash realized this wasn't working, and it wasn't until Ash's life was in danger the two Pokemon actually teamed up, set their differences aside, and realized that they could work together. So we now managed to get an established team, and Froakie's looking pretty good. But later in the timeline, Ash meets the ninja trainer again, finding him going down a river unconscious. When they wake him up, they realize that he actually has a Greninja now, not a Frogadier. They ask Ash for their help to defeat the Barbaracle, so Greninja and Froakie put their differences aside and team up to fight the Barbaracle. The fight wasn't going the greatest. Greninja and Froakie teamed up, but they weren't winning at all. Greninja also looked like he was out for the count, and Barbaracle was going in to do the finishing blow on Froakie, but Froakie decided to evolve into Frogadier to be able to destroy the Barbaracle, showing us his true strength and using his new move Razor Shell. At this point, Frogadier became one of the aces on Ash's team. He showed his true potential, being able to defeat an opponent way stronger than him and saving the Greninja. It seemed like Frogadier almost surpassed his rival, but he developed a brand new one in the process. In a later episode, Ash meets a kid named Sawyer, and he sends out his Trico, and Frogadier and Hawlucha versed them in a double battle. Ash's team completely dominated the battle, but the next day Sawyer came back and Trico had evolved into a Grovyle.
We got to see how Frogadier would handle an even matchup where he even had the type disadvantage, and Frogadier did not disappoint. He made use of his crazy speed, juking out Grovyle, and finished the battle off with the move Water Pulse. But at the end, Frogadier did give Grovyle his respect, and they mutually respected each other, knowing that someday he would be a very formidable foe. As we continue on with Ash and Greninja's journey, something interesting happened. When they went up against the gym leader Olympia, she had to reveal a revelation that she had. She prophesied that Ash's Greninja is actually special, and that he has some dormant power deep inside that he just hasn't awakened yet. She also verbally let Ash know about Greninja's backstory and how he was abandoned when he was younger and looking for a strong trainer his entire life. This motivated Ash a lot, and he resonated with Greninja, knowing his pain, and promised Greninja that he would try his absolute best to make sure that he reaches his full potential, and he'll use him in many battles. Funny enough, they went to immediately fight the gym leader after this, and Greninja and Talonflame won in a double battle using a group attack that we haven't seen them use before. After hearing all this from the gym battle, Ash thought it would be pretty smart to get some more information about Greninja, so they went over to the Ninja Village to actually understand what special power Greninja has deep inside. Here we learn that thousands of years ago, there was an ancient Greninja that had a form that people have never seen before, and he used it to protect the village. While we're learning all this, it gets interrupted because the Ninja Village is under attack. There's a big battle outside of the village, and there's a Bisharp going absolutely crazy. Frogadier's rival, Greninja, tries to fight off the Bisharp but gets absolutely destroyed. Ash sends out Frogadier and Pikachu, and they're trying their absolute best to defeat this Bisharp, but nothing is working against him. Bisharp has them all knocked down, and it seemed like it was over. Bisharp was commanded to use Shadow Claw to finish off Pikachu, but Frogadier jumped in the way, blocking the attack and choosing to evolve into Greninja to protect his friends. Greninja learned the move Water Shuriken, which is one of his signature attacks, and fired it off, but something weird started to happen. Ash felt a strong connection between him and Greninja's eyes started glowing red, and they felt even closer than ever. And Greninja had a water aura surrounding him. We couldn't really see his face, but this Greninja had definitely gotten stronger. And little did Ash and Greninja know, this is the first time they would have used Bond Phenomenon. Not much is known about this transformation, but what we do know is that it's only achievable between certain trainers and Pokemon, like a 1 in a million chance. When this transformation happens, the Pokemon and the trainer are one, so much to the point where when the Pokemon takes damage, the trainer takes damage too. Greninja used his newfound power to absolutely destroy the Bisharp and even surpass his old rival, the other Greninja. Everything was looking good from here. Greninja evolved, protect the village, and even unlocked a brand new form. But Greninja's true stories and real challenges were about to unfold in a way they could have never expected. There were a few instances after this where Ash and Greninja would accidentally tap into the form, but they wouldn't really understand what was going on. The form would also put too much of a strain on Ash's body, which would make him pass out from time to time when activating it, which was really dangerous. Clement made a machine, and he discovered that Ash and Greninja need to be fully in sync to be able to master this form. And while they were doing more training on this, Ash ran into Sawyer again, and he had a rematch with his Sceptile. This Sceptile was no joke now. He grew up. He knew a bunch of dragon type moves and Bullet Seed and Razor Leaf. The battle was getting tough for Greninja, but Ash and Greninja felt in sync, activated their Bond Phenomenon, and completely destroyed Sceptile. But this caught the attention of a trainer in the stands, his name being Alon. Alon was completely shocked that a trainer was able to have a Mega Evolution type transformation without a Mega Stone, so he knew he had to challenge Ash to a battle. Alon revealed to Ash that the ace of his team is his Charizard, Mega Charizard X, and he went head to head with Greninja, completely destroying Greninja, forcing him to transform into Ash Greninja form, but they still lost. Ash and Greninja were pretty bummed out about this, so they got back to training to try to master their new form so they could beat Alon, and when they thought they had a good gripe on it, they challenged Alon again. And I've gotta say, up until this point in the anime, this is one of the most intense fights we've seen. Ash and Greninja were seriously going all out against Alon and his Charizard, and it seriously looked like Greninja was gonna win the fight. But when Charizard transformed into Mega Charizard X, he blasted a flamethrower at Greninja, then hit him with a super effective Thunder Punch. This forced the Battle Bond transformation again, and the battle was looking so even. Greninja and Mega Charizard were going head to head, but it all started catching up to Ash. Ash cannot withstand the damage Greninja took, and he passed out. He woke up in the hospital with all his friends surrounding him, and they were a little worried, but they were happy that Ash was safe. And Ash told Alon that he wants to battle him again at the Pokemon Kalos League, and Alon said that he'll compete. Ash and Greninja were a little down, so they started doing some more training, and then they ran into the champion of the Kalos region, Diantha. Diantha had caught wind that there was a trainer going around with a Pokemon that had a Mega Evolution-like transformation, and she wanted to see it for herself, so they challenged each other to a battle. Ash and Greninja did not hold back. They activated their bomb phenomenon, having that water aura around them, and they got super fast, and they were actually doing really well up against Diantha's Gardevoir. So Diantha had to respond to this, and she Mega Evolved too. This battle was getting so intense. Gardevoir was throwing out Shadow Balls, Greninja was making Shadow Clones, and this truly felt like a championship level battle. Greninja knew he had to do something if he wanted to win this battle, so he took all the energy from the outside of his body and put it onto his back, turning it into a big water shuriken, revealing his face for the first time. Greninja threw his new water shuriken at Diantha's Shadow Ball and cut right through it. But this newfound power was too much for Ash, and Ash passed out, making them lose the battle. Ash and Greninja's confidence didn't get any better from this loss, since they've been losing a lot recently and they really wanted to get better, and Ash felt deep inside he wasn't a good enough trainer for Greninja. They had a rematch with Sawyer and they actually lost against his Sceptile. They didn't lose because they were weak, they lost because Ash's confidence was very low that he couldn't do the Battle Bond transformation anymore with Greninja. All of this was seriously sending Ash down a spiral, making him question his abilities as a Pokemon trainer as a whole, because days ago he was able to beat Sawyer, but now he's losing to him, and he can't even transform anymore. Ash was developing Imposter Syndrome. Imposter Syndrome is where someone is feeling anxious and not feeling the success internally, even though to everybody else they're doing really well. Nobody else thought Ash was fraudulent, only him. Ash decided to try to move on, and they went to Snowbell City to get the last gym badge, and when Ash first challenged the gym leader Wolfric, it wasn't going well. Halucha had already lost, and Talonflame took a big beating too. It was only left to Greninja. Ash tried to tap into the Battle Bomb form, and it worked. Ash and Greninja got their spark back, right? But even with this transformation, they still ended up taking major attacks from Wolfric and losing ultimately to a Gyro Ball. This sent Ash over the edge. They lost again. Later that night, Ash told Greninja how he is really feeling, how he feels like he was being a big letdown, and he was sorry that he's not capable of mastering the transformation for Greninja. So what Ash did is that he left everybody and went off to the forest alone to think. Greninja also was feeling kind of down too, since Ash and Greninja do share some degree of emotions, and Greninja also went off by himself. While Ash was out in the forest, he was helping a wild Pokemon, and the weather started getting worse, and Greninja and Squishy realized Ash was in trouble. They sensed it. They ended up rushing to Ash's aid, and Ash was falling down a cliff, but Greninja saved Ash at the last second. Ash was so excited that his Pokemon came to his rescue, but Ash also let go of the wild Pokemon, and they needed to save him fast. And in that moment, without any hesitation, Ash and Greninja activated Battle Bond, and Greninja jumped down trying to save the Pokemon, and Ash served as Greninja's vision, and Greninja served as the physical body, being able to save the Pokemon. Ash and Greninja were really happy they were able to save the Pokemon, and Ash came to the realization that the Battle Bond transformation should be treated as one, not like two entities, but one together. Greninja agreed on this, and because of their mutual understanding, they finally mastered Battle Bond. Ash and Greninja went back to challenge Wolfglick, and they versed his Mega Obama-Snow. And in this battle, we saw for the first time Ash and Greninja fully transform into Ash Greninja mode, mastering the Battle Bond and going head-to-head with the 8th Gym Leader's Pokemon, and Greninja came out on top. With all that being said and done, Ash and Greninja got their 8th Gym Badge, and now they're ready for the Kalos League, where all of their rivals will be in one place to prove that they're the best of the best. When Ash entered the tournament, he was already on everyone's radars. A bunch of people would come up to him, even news reporters, wanting to see his new transformation with Greninja that no one's ever seen before, making Ash's battles some of the most viewed ones in the Kalos region. And the people weren't disappointed. Ash got his first round against this kid with an Altaria, and Greninja completely decimated it. All of Ash's friends and rivals were also competing in the Kalos League tournament, and they all had different various challenges. But we finally made it to the semi-finals, one of Greninja's most notable matches. Greninja versus Sceptile. They started off the battle playing no game. Sawyer used Mega Evolution on Sceptile, showing off Sceptile's new form, Mega Sceptile, and he used Frenzy Plant to transform the entire arena with vines. Ash and Greninja used Battle Bond to transform, and they dodged the Frenzy Plant vines and used Cut to destroy them. After dodging a bunch of attacks, Greninja goes in on Sceptile and uses Aerial Ace with some of the smoothest animations we've seen in Pokemon, but Sceptile caught Greninja off guard using Leaf Storm. Greninja and Sceptile fought neck and neck, clashing with Leaf Blade and the Water Shuriken back and forth. Ash was seriously feeling the effects of Greninja taking all this damage onto himself, but Ash knew he had to hold on strong so he doesn't lose the battle. Ash and Greninja were fully synced, being able to dodge all of Sceptile's vines, moving left and right, and they knew they had to go in for a finishing blow. Greninja awakened the shuriken on his back and jumped high in the sky and used the move Double Team, paying homage to Naruto with a bunch of his shadow clones, and used Rasa and Shuriken. Sceptile tried to block it with Leaf Storm, but it wasn't enough. Greninja's Water Shuriken hit Sceptile, and Ash and Greninja won the battle, even with the type disadvantage. And with this, Greninja ended the long rivalry with Sceptile, coming out on top and being able to move to the finals with Ash versus Alon. Now this battle is very important for Ash. This is his first time ever making it to the finals in the Pokemon League, and it wasn't looking good. Ash was down to his last Pokemon, Greninja. It was Greninja versus Charizard, the fated matchup that was meant to be. Greninja went in knowing he has the type advantage and got a decent cut in on Charizard, and Ash and Greninja took it as seriously as possible and transformed immediately into Ash Greninja. Alon chose to keep the same energy since he knew if he didn't transform now he would lose, and he transformed into Mega Charizard X, also giving him a neutral advantage because Mega Charizard X is not weak to water types anymore. Alon's Charizard went in for a Dragon Claw, and Ash's Greninja went in and clashed against it too, and they were having some of the greatest hand-to-hand combat we've seen yet in this series. Charizard tried to use Thunder Punch to try to one-shot Greninja, but Ash was smart and told Greninja to use Water Shuriken to deflect the Thunder Punches. Greninja got a clean hit against Alon's Charizard and sent him flying all the way back, and Ash knew it was his opportunity to win. Ash told Greninja to use Water Shuriken. Ash and Alon were simultaneously thinking at the same time that no matter who loses, this has been one of the best battles of their entire lives. Then, Ash's Greninja proceeds to make the biggest Water Shuriken we've seen in the entire series. Alon starts getting scared and tells Charizard to use Blast Burn. Greninja lets off his greatest Shuriken, sending it straight at Mega Charizard, and the Blast Burn gets closer to Greninja, and both of the moves hit each of the Pokemon simultaneously. This created a big explosion, and nobody in the entire arena knew what was happening, and then the smoke started to clear up. We could see Ash's Greninja standing tall, and Alon's Charizard almost fall to the ground. But in the moment, Ash's Greninja fell. Ash lost the battle. Even though Ash and Greninja lost, it wasn't like last time. They were actually proud because they gave it their all and they just lost to a better opponent, and Alon was crowned the champion of the tournament. Before the gang even had time to relax, Team Flare had an evil plan brewing in the back, and Ash and Greninja were at the core of it because the leader of Team Flare was trying to use Ash and Greninja's battle bond to use for evil purposes, but in the end, Ash and Greninja broke free because of their battle bond, and Alon teamed up with them to defeat Team Flare. But we did have an issue with the giant rock shaped like Zygarde trying to destroy the entire world, and all of the champions that were here at this point ended up teaming together to defeat the big rock. Because of all this, Ash's Greninja and Alon's team were named the Heroes of Kalos because they did save the world from this Zygarde. It was looking really good for Ash and Greninja. Even though they didn't win the Pokemon Championship, they did end up saving the world, which was a plus. But something came up. Greninja could actually sense that the evil roots were still popping up around Kalos, and Squishy actually suggested if Greninja could go on a journey with them to help cut down the rocks from time to time so that another evil phenomenon doesn't develop or old Team Flare members don't take advantage of this situation. Ash was really hurt after hearing this news, but he knew Greninja would be serving a much greater purpose, constantly saving the lives of others, then coming back to Kanto with him. So Ash and Greninja said farewell. They gave each other a handshake and gave each other a big hug, and Ash promised to meet them again. And we didn't see Ash's Greninja for a very long time in the Pokemon animes, not until Pokemon Journeys. In Pokemon Journeys, Ash had a Lucario and he was having a bit of trouble tapping into his aura and sometimes Mega Evolution. So Ash thought it would be a good idea to make Lucario meet up with Greninja since he felt the same type of energy back then with Lucario. When we make it to the Kalos region, we can actually see the evil vines are still infecting the region, and out of nowhere, Ash's Greninja appears back again and meets up with Ash and Lucario, saving them from the vines. Ash is so happy to see Greninja again, and he actually asks Greninja for a favor if he can 1v1 him and Lucario and help train Lucario so he doesn't have any self-doubt about his ability. Greninja agrees to help out Ash, and they get right to the battle. Lucario realizes very quickly he's outmatched for Ash's Greninja, and he completely loses. loses it. Lucario ends up getting really sad and runs away, but when Ash wants to go after Lucario, Greninja says he'll take you from here and talk to Lucario. Lucario and Greninja end up having a heart-to-heart conversation, which I wish I could tell you what they were saying, but they literally just talked in Pokemon language, so I can only assume that he was giving him good advice. The advice Greninja gave Lucario was so good because Lucario was able to respect Greninja after this point and no longer be jealous of him. And the training paid off because when Lucario met back up with Ash, he was able to learn Aura Spear and do a really big attack. By the end of all this, Ash completed his original mission on trying to get Lucario to tap in with his Aura energy, and Ash thanked Greninja and they were off saying farewell again. And that seemed to be it for Greninja. He headed off and Ash tells Go that even if him and Greninja are far apart, Ash will always have a strong connection with Greninja to know if he's well. Greninja definitely has one of the more complex stories in the Pokemon anime, starting off from a little Froakie and becoming a world-class Pokemon. The next ace Pokemon Ash gets is in the Alola region, and he has 2 this season between Incineroar and Lycanrok, and both of those stories are devastating, so we'll start off with the Pokemon he meets first, Litten.
In the beginning of the Alola season in the Pokemon anime, Ash encounters a Litten who is pretty nice and wants to play. Rotom Dex explains that this is pretty strange since Littens don't trust anyone at all. Ash, being the gullible kid that he is, wanted to give Litten a piece of his sandwich, but when you give someone an inch, they take a mile because Litten snatched the entire sandwich and dipped. Ash fell for Litten's plan. They tried to catch up to Litten to understand why he did that, but he just gets away. And while Litten was running, he ended up encountering a Alolan Persian that just wanted all the smoke. And this Persian just didn't want to see Litten happy since he stole his sandwich and tricked Litten into burning the sandwich. So Litten's back to square one. He has no food. And most people would have called it quits here. You stole the food and you fail. But Litten is a certified demon because he goes back for round 2 stealing more food. When Ash encounters his gang, he lets them know that there's a Litten running around and stealing food, and they let him know that he's actually been doing this for a while. And the question on everyone's mind is, why is Litten stealing people's food? And the answer to that question isn't so nice. When we head over to Litten's house, we find him bringing food to a Stoutland, which he considers his master. This Stoutland is very sick and doesn't have enough energy to bring food of its own, so Litten roams around the city and brings food back for him. Stoutland tries to give Litten the food that he brings, but Litten always refuses it, since the only thing that makes his Litten happy is seeing this Stoutland. In return, this Stoutland tries to train Litten by helping him get better at using his fire and commanding him and giving him tidbits on how to be more powerful. Later that night when Litten was sleeping, the dark side must have been strong with him because just like Anakin Skywalker, Litten is getting some crazy dreams of his master dying. The same dream repeats over and over of Litten trying to wake up Stoutland from his sleep, but he never wakes up. This scares Litten, even waking him up from his sleep, but he tries to pay little mind to it. A few days later, Ash is taking a run, and he encounters this Litten being cornered by a Persian trying to kill him over a damn berry. Ash comes down to try to stop the fight and tells Persian that it's not that deep, it's only one berry, but this Persian wants blood. Pikachu jumps into the mix and completely wipes the Persian, but when we pan over to Litten, he's completely tired and defeated, but only one thing is on his mind, delivering that berry to the Stoutland. Ash tries to help this Litten out by bringing him to a Pokemon Center, but Litten completely refuses to, because in Litten's mind, Ash is just another thief that's trying to steal his berry from Stoutland. But Litten almost passes out from exhaustion, so Ash takes Litten by force to a Pokemon Center, but makes sure to bring its berry with him. When Nurse Joy heals Litten up, she lets Ash know that Litten needs to rest and not run around, but Litten immediately books it and runs for the door. Ash ends up catching up to Litten and tells Litten to just trust him, since his injuries are just gonna end up getting worse the more he runs around. Ash ends up bringing Litten back to his place, and later that night they end up having a heart-to-heart discussion where Ash is letting Litten know that he honestly only wants the best for him, and he understands that there's probably a lot going on to his life and it's bigger than him just stealing food. Litten ends up trusting Ash enough to bring him towards his home to see the sick Stoutland. Ash fully understands the full picture. He admits that he originally wanted to add Litten onto his team, but now that he's actually taking care of his master, there's no way he could possibly do that, and he wants to do anything he can help to help this Stoutland. While they're discussing this, the Persian comes around the corner for some reason, stalking Litten and still wants revenge. The Persian challenges Litten to a 1v1, and Ash could have stepped in and just stopped this, but he let Litten fight his own battle.
Scoutland was watching too and gave Litten some tidbits on how to defeat this Persian, and Litten led off its first powerful attack against this Persian, winning the battle. After all this, you would think Litten was locked in with Ash and trusted him, but when Ash came to visit Litten the next day to bring him food so he wouldn't have to scavenge anymore, Litten had moved away. Litten's paranoia had gotten the best of him, since in Litten's eyes, it's Scoutland and him versus the entire world, and even though Ash did a really kind thing and he likes him, he just can't trust him. So we actually didn't see Litten for a while in the Pokemon anime. And it wasn't until a later episode where Team Rocket was after Ash's Rowlet and Populo, where they got lost in the forest and met Litten. These Pokemon explained to Litten that they were lost and they were trying to get back to their trainer, which was Ash, and Litten actually led them to their home, where the Scoutland lived, which was under a bridge, not the home we last saw them at. Litten comes to Scoutland and asks his master on what he should do with these Pokemon, and after Scoutland took a closer look at these Pokemon, he told Litten to help them return back to Ash, to repay the favor that Ash did to them a while back. So while Litten tries to lead them back to Ash, they end up encountering Team Rocket again and getting captured. But there's a twist. While Litten was captured, he let Meowth know his backstory, letting him know that he's the way he is because of all the conditions he was brought up, and all the Pokemon in the area started crying since Litten's backstory was so sad. So sad to the point where Team Rocket felt bad for Litten and offered him a spot on the team, as long as Litten just left behind the Populo and Rowlet. Populo and Rowlet were scared on the decision Litten was going to make, because yes, Litten's freedom would be guaranteed if he goes to Team Rocket, but then they would 100% have no way of getting out of the cage. Litten ends up accepting the deal with Team Rocket since he just met these Pokemon today, and while Meowth was going to free Litten, he double crosses them and frees Rowlet and Populo. And they end up doing a group attack and sending off Team Rocket, and Ash comes upstairs and finally finds his Pokemon who went missing, and they let him know that it's because of Litten that they're saved. Ash tries to thank Litten and ask him what's up with Scoutland, but Litten, who is still scared of humans, leaves and runs away without telling Ash anything, but Ash still has an open mind, saying that he'll meet Litten again. And Ash was right. In a later episode, he encountered Litten at a market, and he followed Litten all the way to his new home under the bridge, where he watched him practicing the move Fire Fang with Snoutland. Snoutland continued to give Litten pointers on how to perfect the move, but Litten was still struggling. Ash left to give Litten some space, but then later that day, Litten came running frantically towards Ash. Litten was in trouble. He forced Ash to follow him back down to the bridge, where we can see Snoutland is in a super worse condition than we saw him earlier today. Ash immediately understands what's going on and understands that Snoutland needs help ASAP, so Ash actually picks him up and drags him all the way to the Pokemon Center, awaiting Nurse Joy's care. When Snoutland finally made it to the Pokemon Center, Nurse Joy and Chansey worked their hardest on Snoutland all night long, but to no avail. Nurse Joy came out to explain the situation to Ash, but before Litten could hear it, he ran inside to see Snoutland. While Litten was inside checking on his friend, outside Nurse Joy explained to Ash that Snoutland doesn't have much time and he's getting old. It's not that he's sick or has a disease, his time is just coming. Ash understands the situation and wants to be there for Litten when Snoutland's time comes. Meowth is also lurking behind the corner, and he feels extremely sad for Litten, since he feels like no Pokemon should have to go through what Litten's about to go through, the loss of a loved one. Ash left for a moment to go get food for Litten and Snoutland, but when he came back, Litten and Snoutland were missing. Ash and Pikachu run, trying to find out where Snoutland and Litten went, but on their way to try to find them, Meowth actually stops them and gives them a heart-to-heart conversation, letting Ash know that he has to be there for Litten for what's about to happen, since Litten's about to be all alone. Litten ended up bringing Snoutland back to their home, and Litten was practicing the move Fire Fang, not yet perfected, but it was getting better, and Snoutland took notice of this. Litten also noticed that Snoutland was getting tired, so he decided to take a rest with him, and while Litten was sleeping, he had another dream. A dream where he was running and Snoutland was getting farther and farther away from him until he eventually disappeared. And when Litten woke up, that's exactly what happened. Scoutland was gone. Litten desperately searched around the entire island of Alola trying to find Scoutland, since he was trying to hang on to the glimmer of hope that Scoutland just ran away or something and that he wasn't dead. But Litten came to the cruel realization that Scoutland was gone and passed away and wanted to die in peace, not in front of Litten. While Litten was wandering home, he saw a dust cloud, hoping that it was maybe Scoutland, but it was actually just a tree, symbolizing Scoutland passing on because the single leaf fell off the tree, landing onto the couch. And then it started raining. Raining very hard, since sometimes Pokemon can't cry, and symbolically this rain was making sure Litten's tears were felt, and it was a pretty sad scene in the Pokemon anime. Ash and Professor Kukui just found Litten crying out to the withered tree in the rain all by himself.
Lydon walked back over to the couch where the Soul Leaf was and decided to lay there, not moving. Even in the distance, Meowth felt sad for Lydon's loss of Scoutland. Ash knew Lydon was going through a harsh time, so every day Ash came over to check up on Lydon, making sure that he was getting better, but Lydon just seemed the same. He kept bringing food and Lydon wouldn't eat it. Even from time to time, Meowth would come over in secret trying to help Lydon and cheer him up, but Lydon really just didn't want to talk to anybody. It showed the unity that Lydon's pain brought together by making everyone try to cheer him up. But then eventually, the light at the end of the tunnel showed. The rain stopped, and the Soul Leaf Lydon was hanging onto blew away. And in the distance, Lydon could see Scoutland's spirit in the clouds, waving him goodbye. Lydon got the closure that he wanted after the death of Scoutland, and he was actually able to join Ash's team after this, since Ash was beside him throughout the entire process. Even Meowth in the distance saw this and was happy to see the ending of Lydon's story arc going along with Ash, saying that it's for the better even though they're going to be enemies now. And that should be the end, right? Ash helps Lydon get through the trauma of losing a loved one, and he joins Ash's team and everything's happily ever after. But Lydon's biggest challenge was yet to come. In a later episode where Ash and Lydon were chilling and watching TV, they end up seeing an Incineroar on TV at the Battle Royale, and he's got 20 consecutive wins. This lights a passion in Lydon, since someone a part of his bloodline is going so crazy on television, so Lydon pulls up to the Battle Royale and challenges Incineroar to a battle. And even though Lydon wasn't supposed to hop on the Battle Royale stage, Incineroar plays along since he sees a burning passion in this young Pokemon. And this Incineroar put Lydon into a pack. Lydon jumped into the battle using Fire Fang, Incineroar caught it and used Throat Chop on Lydon, one-shotting him. Lydon was pretty sad from this defeat, but it also gave him motivation to want to beat Incineroar, and Incineroar acknowledged Lydon as a rival since he hasn't met a Pokemon this fired up to get strong. The next day, Master Royale and Incineroar pulled up on Ash and Lydon's block and challenged him to another battle because they wanted Lydon to get stronger at a faster rate. When they got into the heat of the battle, Incineroar was completely dominating, but he didn't want to just mess around. He was actually trying to teach Lydon how to use some of his moves, and this battle made Lydon be able to master the move Flame Charge. Even though Lydon now mastered this move, Incineroar took it a step too far. He started crushing Lydon with his bare hands. This was so tough on Lydon that it forced him to evolve into Torracat, unlocking a huge boost in strength with this evolution. They continued fighting the battle, going neck and neck, but in the end, Incineroar used Throat Chop to show Torracat he's not that guy and prove that Torracat has a long way to go. Even though Ash and Torracat lost, some of them are really sad because they knew that they had the potential to completely beat these guys in the future and they just had to get stronger. But earlier in this video, I mentioned that this rivalry actually transcends time, and that's actually true. In a later episode, Celebi, the time legendary Pokemon, sends Ash back into the past, where Incineroar and Master Royale are kids. When Ash meets them, he doesn't recognize this as Master Royale, and there's no way Master Royale would recognize this as Ash since he never met him in the timeline yet. But Master Royale challenges Ash to a battle with his Lydon while Ash is using his Torracat, and Torracat basically gets his get back in the past because he completely bodies this Lydon. Master Royale was pretty sad at this defeat, but he vowed to become just as strong as Ash's Torracat, which is ironic because in the future he definitely is. Master Royale makes a vow to Lydon that they never want to lose another battle again, and Ash is pretty happy at their resolution, but before they get to change names, Celebi sends Ash back to his proper timeline. And when Ash gets back to the present, if it wasn't obvious enough, Master Royale is actually Professor Kukui. Now, a lot of time have passed, and Ash and Torracat are growing together with a strong bond, and they even make occasional cameos at the Battle Royale to help out Incineroar when he's in a bit of trouble. But it was all leading up to one grand thing, the Alola Pokemon League, where Torracat would want to get his get back on Incineroar to prove that he can beat Incineroar as a Torracat. And this Alola League final battle was hype between Ash and Professor Kukui that they even started off the battle with Torracat and Incineroar. The start of this battle wasn't looking good for Torracat. Incineroar bulked up and got some major buffs, and they were counterattacking everything Torracat was throwing at him. But Torracat wasn't weak either. Incineroar threw out Darkest Lariat. If you didn't know, that's Incineroar's signature move, and Torracat dodges it. Incineroar was pretty happy that Torracat became worthy of a full-on fight, and Incineroar used the move Blast Burn. This move was such a massive ball of fire hurling right towards Torracat, and Torracat tanked it like a champ and absorbed it into the bell on Torracat's neck.
Doing this though had some massive effects on Torracat, because yes, it was pretty hyped that Torracat was able to absorb Incineroar's massive fire attack, but Torracat only can do so much, so Ash decided to return it for a bit to rest. Ash sent out Lycanrok to deal with Incineroar for a little bit, which was a pretty smart move on Ash's part. And Lycanrok got a devastating hit on Incineroar, so Professor Kukui sent back Incineroar into his Pokeball to rest so he can have the final battle with Torracat. And this battle was neck and neck with some of the best animation we've seen in a Pokemon battle to date. Incineroar and Torracat were showing us all what fire-type Pokemon are made of. Torracat blasted a Fire Blast at Incineroar, but Incineroar tanked it. Torracat went in to try to finish Incineroar off with one of his signature attacks that he learned from his deceased friend Scoutland, Fire Fang, and it was about to work, but Incineroar caught him. And it seemed like it was over. Torracat was back in the same position he was when he was a Litten, in the hands of Incineroar, helpless and can't do a thing. Incineroar ended up using Throat Chop on Torracat. Everyone thought the battle was over, but Torracat didn't give up. It used one of its strongest moves yet, Revenge. Revenge is a move that if you get hit by it, you end up dealing double damage to your opponent. And that's exactly what happened to Incineroar, inflicting major damage upon him. Both of their lives were hanging on by a thread, and they knew they had to end the battle quickly. Incineroar used Inferno Overdrive and tried to attack Litten with it. Litten powered up his Revenge, and Incineroar used Throat Chop as a final battle, colliding into the fire to decide who the winner is. After both attacks hit, they were both left standing, but Incineroar fell first. Torracat won the battle. Because of Torracat finally being able to complete its goal of defeating Incineroar, it chose to finally evolve into an Incineroar, coming full circle from when it was once a little Litten into a very powerful Incineroar. And funny enough, we actually never really saw Ash use this Incineroar since the season kind of ended and Ash kind of axed this Pokemon, but we won't talk about that. This story is honestly one of my favorites in the Pokemon anime, and honestly I teared up a bit while rewatching some scenes for the anime for this video. Lycanrok though is next up, and his story is a little more underrated than everybody else's. When Ash first made it to the islands, he met Professor Kukui and a Rockruff that would hang around him all day. At first, Ash thought that Rockruff was Professor Kukui's Pokemon, but he lets him know that Rockruff is actually a wild Pokemon that just hangs around them all day. Rockruff gravitated pretty quickly towards Ash and Pikachu, and they started all vibing pretty well. But one day when they came back home, they realized Rockruff was missing, and when they finally found him, he was completely injured inside the house. They rushed over to Rockruff to heal him immediately, and when they tried asking Rockruff what was wrong or what even happened, he didn't want to tell them at all, and he just wanted to keep it to himself. Professor Kukui wasn't going to let that one slide, and he told everyone to gather around the TV because he actually has security cameras which caught Rockruff sneaking out in 4K. Now, Rockruff must have had Saul Goodman or Jayoma as his lawyer, because even though they had crystal clear footage, he didn't tell them anything and still acted like he was innocent. So, Ash and Professor Kukui had a plan. They told Rockruff that they're going to be heading out and he's going to be home alone tonight, but little did Rockruff know, Ash and Professor Kukui were actually camping outside the house looking at the security camera so that they'd be able to follow Rockruff to figure out what's going on. When they looked at the camera, they saw Rockruff getting into a fight with one of the plushies, but then the rocks on his neck started glowing and he ran outside, dipping into the forest. When the gang ended up following him, they made their way over to a mountain where two Lycanrocs were howling at the moon, gathering around a bunch of Pokemon. And at first glance, you'd think that they're just hosting a big Pokemon meeting for everyone to gather around, but no, they're actually hosting a Pokemon fight club where they all gather and box it out. And you may think I'm exaggerating about the severity of this fight club, but no, all these Pokemon gather around big and small and they all want smoke. And to be honest, this is not something I thought I'd see on my Pokemon anime bingo card. Ash wanted to put a stop to this because he thought Rockruff was in danger, but Professor Kukui just said to let him cook and let's see what's actually going on. We see this Magmar that is absolutely bodying everyone, and Rockruff steps up to the plate, challenging him to a 1v1, and they go at it. They were going neck and neck, trading blows, and it actually looked like Rockruff had a decent chance at winning, but Magmar hit Rockruff with a pretty sly sneak attack, and Rockruff ended up losing the fight. Even though Rockruff lost, it was pretty easy to tell that his favorite category of music is murder music, because even after all this, he was excited to watch all the violence that was going on here. Once everyone went home, Rockruff ended up encountering Ash in the forest, and Ash let Rockruff know that he actually watched the whole thing, and he's pretty proud that Rockruff wants to become a strong Pokemon, and he's actually willing to train Rockruff so he's able to take down that Magmar. Rockruff is pretty happy to hear this, and he accepts Ash's training, and they get to work. So, like any good training arc, you gotta cue the montage music.
How could I make a man out of you?
Be a man.
We must be swift as a coursing river. If I keep going, I'll get a strike. No, I seriously would though. So at the end of this training arc, Ash and Rockruff ended up bonding a lot, and Rockruff ended up learning how to use the move Rock Throw, which he thought would be very useful when he goes to rematch the Magmar. Rotom Dex also comes over and lets everybody know that the look in Rockruff's eyes is pure determination, and he's not too sure what evolutionary path he'll take, the Dusk form or the Midday form. With all that being said and done, it was finally fight night, and Rockruff and the gang pulled up to verse Magmar again, and when the battle started, it was looking pretty good for Rockruff, but then Magmar hit Rockruff with a surprise attack, so Rockruff started charging up his brand new move Rock Throw, but Magmar decided to break the rules of anime by interrupting Rockruff's charged attack with a flamethrower. That didn't really phase Rockruff though, and he ended up finally charging up his new move Rock Throw and knocking out the Magmar, gaining the respect of every single person in the Fight Club. After all that, Ash was so proud of Rockruff since their training paid off and he was finally able to defeat a super strong opponent. Professor Kukui even suggested that Rockruff actually joins Ash's team since they seem to form such a great connection. And with that, the rest was history. Rockruff accepted the invite to join Ash's team and they became the best of friends. But little did everybody know that this was only the beginning of Rockruff's story. In future episodes, Rockruff was training with the rest of the group and they hear there's a pretty powerful Lycanrok trainer in town. When they end up going to town, they realize that it's actually Lily's brother Gladion that has the night form of Lycanrok. Ash ends up challenging Gladion to a battle and they end up going over to the beach and having their first battle between Rockruff and Midnight Lycanrok. And to be honest, even calling this a battle is a stretch because Rockruff was getting completely bodied by Lycanrok. He was chasing him down and fully outspeeding him, but Team Rocket ended up interrupting the battle, doing their usual shenanigans, capturing Lycanrok, and Rockruff ended up saving the day. Doing all this, Rockruff ended up gaining the respect of Lycanrok, and Gladion even said that he'll end up fighting Rockruff and Ash again as rivals, and they'll actually finish the battle to figure out who's the true winner. Later down the line on Ash and Rockruff's journey, they ended up challenging Olivia, the Rock-type island trial, and her ace Pokemon was Lycanrok, Midday form to be exact, and this lighted a fire inside of Rockruff. So much to the point where Rockruff started going feral and bit Ash's hand because he just wanted to battle. When the trial finally began, it was a double battle between Lycanrok and Probopass versus Rockruff and Rowlet. Rockruff and Rowlet tried to do a group attack to make the battle quick, but Lycanrok did not care and just used one move and blasted them away, and then Probopass put them in an open domain, trapping them. And then Rowlet actually used his brain and picked up Rockruff and flew out of it, and this is one of the few instances where I see the Pokemon actually working together in a double battle. Lycanrok wasn't gonna let this slide though, and he jumped up in the air and knocked their ass right back down, and this got Rockruff pretty mad, where he started raging out on the Rowlet of all people. Olivia said she wasn't done yet and used her Z move to summon a boulder from the sky to crush the two Pokemon. They narrowly were able to escape thanks to Rowlet, and Rockruff had a plan. He snuck up on Lycanrok and bit onto him and told Ash to use Rowlet's Z move to just nuke the entire place and end the battle. And this is just taken straight out of an episode of Dragon Ball. Rowlet's Z move actually ended up working and they knocked out Probopass, but Lycanrok and Rockruff were still alive. And Rockruff called an ISO against Lycanrok and didn't want Rowlet to fight, but Rowlet didn't really take that seriously and still wanted to help out, so he started to join in, but then Rockruff completely crashed out and knocked out his own teammate, saying that this is his 1v1. And to be honest, Rockruff seriously needs a therapist because this is like strike 3 of his anger issues. Ash was pretty shocked about this and he tried to calm down Rockruff, and he ended up listening to Ash and using their signature move Rock Throw to end up defeating the Lycanrok and defeating the island trial. They ended up being given a rock type Z crystal for Rockruff to be able to use, and everybody said that it seemed like Rockruff was pretty close to evolving, but everyone was really wondering why was Rockruff continuously acting out and hurting his own teammates. Later that night, Rockruff was pretty bummed out about this. He truly didn't understand why he was getting mad at every single person. He couldn't control this anger, so he snuck away and he went out to the beach to start training. While training, he ended up encountering Tapu Lele, and at first this seemed like a very nice encounter, but then she put him into his domain expansion and started beating the living hell out of Rockruff. Once Rockruff got defeated for practically no reason, Ash ended up finding
finding him on the beach, and Rockruff was very angry at Ash for some reason and didn't even want his help. It got so bad to the point where Rockruff tackled Ash and bit him, then ran away. Everyone was concerned about what was going on with Rockruff, so they sent out a search party to look for him, and while Rockruff was roaming the mountains, he ended up falling down a cliff into a river. He luckily got saved by Olivia's midday Lycanroc form, and the night form of Lycanroc also pulled up too to try to help Rockruff out. They ended up working together trying to heal Rockruff and get him back to safety, but when they were at the top of the canyon, Tapu Lele pulled up again and then used Psychic on the night form of Lycanroc and also attacked the midday form of Lycanroc. Both of them were so confused on what was going on, and they tried to fight Tapu Lele, but since she's a legendary, they were obviously losing. Ash ended up making it to where all the commotion was happening, and Tapu Lele ended up using her signature move Draining Kiss on the midday form of Lycanroc, midnight form of Lycanroc, and Ash, knocking them all out. And then Tapu Lele did the unthinkable. She ended up channeling all of their energy into Rockruff, waking him up and fully healing him. And when Rockruff was awake, his eyes started glowing orange. He was staring at the sun, and it was going through a rare phenomenon where it turns green, and Rockruff evolved. Because Rockruff ended up taking the energy from the two different forms and staring at a unique sun, he ended up evolving into the dusk form of Lycanroc, a form that has never been seen before in the Alola region. With all that being said, everything seemed perfect. Lycanroc evolved into a completely unique form, and everyone was so happy for it. Lycanroc was even happy to be a part of Ash's team and loved his trainer so much. But little did everybody know, the biggest problems for Lycanroc were only just beginning. Because let's be serious for a minute, it seems like anytime this Pokemon faces any adversity, he just seems to crash out. So I had to hit up my boy Wheezy to diagnose Lycanroc with whatever problem he seems to have.
Oh, he developed problems, alright. What's the word, y'all? It's Wheezy, and I'm gonna walk you through these said problems. Thank you for the mic, Thunder. Hey, viewers' discretion is advised. Let's just cut to the chase. The bitch done thought he was a furfur. This dude Lycanroc evolved and forgot who he was. That special ass orange dusk form and all the glazing he got from it went straight to his head. He even had Rotom phone confused, like a rock type that enjoys baths. Who the hell is he feeling like? And don't get me wrong, grooming yourself ain't a bad thing. That's W cleanliness. But a rock type dog that likes water, something is fishy. And what about when things aren't so squeaky clean, huh? Like peep this. Litten walks by, right? And Ash startles him into accidentally knocking over a tub of water directly onto Lycanroc. Everyone thinks it's chill at first, but as soon as Lycanroc realizes, oh my god, bro started tripping. Ew, rabies. You could have sworn they not teammates, bruh. He wanted blood. Shit escalated so fast that Ash had to step in the middle and they straight barged into each other. I'm like, god damn, over some fur? Now, Lycanroc was obviously out of line here, but I just wrote it off as some banter among teammates. Sometimes emotions rile up and things happen until later on that day, Ash encounters Gladion and is introducing his newly evolved Lycanroc like,
look at him, he's not a day form or a night form, so I called him dusk form. Isn't he pretty?
And Lycanroc's like, oh, Ash, you reminded me how utterly special and better than everyone I am. God, I'm so happy you're not one of those ugly normie forms, especially the night one. Yuck! I know Gladion's Lycanroc was pissed, but later on when they decided to battle, it was cool to pass the reins to Sylvali for the 1v1 versus Ash's Lycanroc. That Lycanroc, what do you think of him? Fuck that pretty boy! Hey man, I can't blame him. The battle starts with Lycanroc using Rock Throw, which is countered by Sylvali's double hit. Gladion then showed why he's a real battler and used Sword Stance to double his attack before launching a Crush Claw. Lycanroc barely dodges that shit before getting in close to use Bite. For him, this Sylvali has really been in the lab, because he dodged and weaved it before sending Lycanroc back. Ash then upped the pressure a little bit by using a Cellurock, which knocked him back a bit. Then, the two of them decided to brute force hit for hit with Lycanroc's Bite and Sylvali's double hit. And this is where the unthinkable happens. Lycanroc gets overpowered and gets absolutely launched into a nearby lake. Lycanroc slowly gets up like, motherfucker, oh, I need to learn Sword Stance. Wait, what's this? I'm ugly! Oh my god, I'm hideous! Oh, my beautiful orange mane, yuck! You. So we're playing dirty, huh? Okay. Ash is then like, hey, glad you could still battle. Use Acceler. Shut the fuck up. It's personal now. And he started seeing red. No finesse, no strategy, just hard-headedness. Launching attacks wildly and just getting easily slapped back. Ash even had to step in and try to calm him down to little success. It wasn't until Nebby the Cosmog sound waves from crying produced so much force that it finally dried off his fur and calmed him down. A little bit weird, a little bit of a cop-out, but okay. This is the shit that really blows my mind, bro. You do all this bitching and moaning. Oh, my fur, it's it's dirty, my aura, owie, owie, owie. And then after the fight gets restarted, you get clapped under 30 seconds. Holy. Now this was embarrassing, but at the very least, it was kind of an inconsequential battle in the middle of nowhere. And he never did it in an island trial until he did it in an island trial. I mean, come on, bruh. It took one cool mud slap from Nanu's Krookodile to just dirty the hell out of him. And it was the same thing. Crash out, not listen, get your ass beat like the whiny little brat. Oh my god, bruh. Yes, it cost him the battle, and yes, it caused Ash to start crying. I can't even look at this thing no more, bruh. Thunder, take the mic back, bruh. I'm out of here.
So from Wheezy's analysis, it's pretty clear to say that Lycanrok is a D1 Crashout that probably has anger issues and most definitely has abandonment issues, but that's okay because Ash was trying to work through this with Lycanrok. Ash ends up bringing his entire team to the top of a mountain, trying to just figure out what's going on and so that they can all get stronger, and they end up meeting Tapu Bulu. They end up trying to ask Tapu Bulu what's going on with Lycanrok, but he was pretty useless and just kind of stared at them. Ash and the gang continued their training, and then it started raining, and Rowlet was a little clumsy and ended up falling in mud, getting it all over Lycanrok. And oh my goodness, the same thing started happening again. Lycanrok started to crash out because he didn't like being seen as a dirty Pokemon, feeling ugly and feeling worthless. Basically, in Lycanrok's mind, if he doesn't look the best he can possibly be 24/7, it's not possible for anyone to accept him the way he is because he's an outlier. He's a completely brand new form and nobody gets him. But Ash ended up showing how mature of a trainer he actually was because he ended up having a one-on-one conversation with Lycanrok while he was mad, letting Lycanrok know that no matter how he looks, dirty or clean, that he'll always like him and he values him ever since he was a Rockruff. And with Lycanrok hearing these words for the first time in his life, he ended up calming down and being able to tame this Red Eyes form that he has, being able to control his power. They were even able to fight Tapu Bulu after this to test their strength, and they did pretty good. In this fight, Lycanrok even got dirty, and he didn't get mad at all because he just thought about the words Ash said, locked in, and was able to continue fighting. Because of all this, Ash felt confident enough to rematch the island trial that they originally lost, and Ash was only allowed to use one Pokemon while they would be versing 3. So the one Pokemon Ash decided to choose was Lycanrok, and he did not make a mistake. In this fight, we also learned that Lycanrok can willingly go into his Red Eyes form when he's mad. This is basically the equivalent of a Sharingan that Lycanrok has. He can just turn on and get a crazy power boost. And because of all this, they ended up winning the island trial, and they ended up even being gifted the Lycanian Z Crystal, and this is a super rare shard that lets them use a custom Z move, where Lycanrok gets a new signature move called Splintered Stone Shard, and the animation on this move is always cool. Ash and Lycanrok were feeling pretty confident up to this point. They continued traveling on their journey, and they even felt that they were powerful enough to challenge Gladion to a rematch. When they went into this fight, it was looking pretty even. Lycanrok went into a Sharingan form and started dodging a bunch of attacks and got some good hits in, but they were still unfortunately no match for the Midnight form of Lycanrok because he ended up ending the battle by using his own Z move and knocking out Lycanrok. Even though that they lost, they weren't really that sad, and they said that they'll have their final battle in the Pokemon Alola League tournament. And they definitely didn't lie because this tournament was right around the corner. When they entered, Ash and Gladion continued going really far in the tournament, and they ended up facing each other in the semi-finals. All their Pokemon were down for the count, and they were only left with one Pokemon each, Lycanrok versus Lycanrok. Everything here was on the line because whoever wins this match would become the Pokemon champion of the Alola region and would be able to face Master Royale in the exhibition match to prove who is the strongest. When the battle began, they wasted no time. Lycanrok activated his Sharingan, and they both decided to simultaneously use Stone Edge. When the dust cleared, the dust form of Lycanrok used Tackle onto the Midnight form of it, but the Midnight form used Counter and knocked back Ash's Lycanrok. Midnight form ended up using Stone Edge again, but Lycanrok ended up dodging it. He kept dodging and went in to use Bite, but he saw that Midnight form was charging up Counter, so they waited a second, but this is exactly what Gladion wanted, and they hit Lycanrok head on with a Stone Edge. After this, you would literally think that Gladion only had 2 moves in his kit, Counter and Stone Edge, because they kept spamming the same move over and over again. Ash ended up realizing this, so he told Lycanrok to jump over the Stone Edge and hit the Midnight form of Lycanrok head on, and it actually ended up working. Or so we thought, because Gladion was planning for all of this and told Lycanrok to use Counter, and he ended up dodging to the side and getting a direct punch on Ash's Lycanrok right into the stomach, sending him flying. And it looked really bad for Ash's Lycanrok. He was really low on HP, and both of them were at their limit. It continued going back and forth, going blow for blow, and then Gladion finally decided to use a brand new move with his Lycanrok, and they used Outrage, a super powerful attack, being able to break all the way through Ash's Lycanrok Stone Edge, and the second he was was about to make it to Lycanrok, he ended up getting confused because this is a byproduct of using the move Outrage. Ash's Lycanrok ended up trying to use this as an opportunity to attack, but the Midnight form ended up biting itself to snap itself out of confusion and countered Ash's Lycanrok, ending up knocking him right onto the ground. Ash knew they were getting low and they needed to end the battle quickly, so Lycanrok used all of his energy to use one final attack on Gladion's Midnight Lycanrok, but he still ended up using the move counter, and Lycanrok fell for it, getting hit. This is way too much, since counter is a move that makes you do double the damage when you are hit, and Ash's Lycanrok couldn't take it anymore, until they did the unthinkable. Ash told Lycanrok to counter the counter, which would be ×4 the original damage, and Lycanrok ended up succeeding, knocking out the Midnight form of Lycanrok. Because of all of this, Ash's Lycanrok's goal was completed. He was able to defeat his rival at the highest possible tournament ever, making them Alola League champions. Ash was so proud of his team because he's never won a tournament before, and even in the exhibition match against Professor Kukui, Lycanrok was a big help, being able to get a devastating blow on Incineroar, who is the ace of Professor Kukui's team and definitely one of the strongest Pokemon in the entire room. And if Lycanrok never got this specific hit off, they would have never won the battle, but I explained that in another video. Overall, after the Alola tournament, in Pokemon Journeys, Lycanrok appears from time to time, but doesn't really have the pivotal role that he once had during the Alola saga. In the end though, it's pretty safe to say that Lycanrok is one of Ash's best rock-type Pokemons and has one of the coolest revenge stories in the Pokemon anime. With all that being said, we have finally made it to Ash's final ace Pokemon, Lucario, whose story is somewhat intertwined with Greninja, and this Pokemon was pretty impactful to Ash's squad. Before this Pokemon was even born, he had Aura. Like, I'm not joking, this Pokemon would not hatch from its egg unless it found a really powerful trainer that was worthy of taming him. So much time went by, this egg never found its trainer, and it just stayed unhatched. Meanwhile, Ash and Go were talking to the professor about Pokemon eggs. They were talking about how they've never seen a Pokemon lay an egg before, and Go wanted to go find a Pokemon egg out in the wild. While they were searching, this other trainer pulled up on Ash's block, asking him to get into a Pokemon battle with him, and while they were fighting, the battle was pretty close, and Pikachu and Ash were exerting a lot of energy, and all of this caught the attention of Riolu. His egg started shaking like crazy in the hospital room because he felt like he finally found his trainer. When Ash finished up his battle, he felt a strange aura calling out to him. It felt pretty similar to Greninja, but Greninja's all the way in the Kalos region, so who could it possibly be? Ash and Pikachu went and followed the aura. It ended up leading them to a Pokemon Center, and the second Ash went there, he got drawn towards the energy of the egg, and it started shaking and reacting to Ash's presence. Nurse Joy was super shocked about this, since this egg has basically never moved before up until Ash's came. She ended up making the bold decision to entrust the egg in Ash's care, since he was the only one that seemed worthy enough to hatch it. With that, Ash accepted the offer and brought it back to the professor's lab. They were doing all sorts of research all day long trying to hatch this egg, but nothing would work, up until it was nighttime. While Ash was sleeping at night, the egg started glowing, it was hatching, and Pikachu woke everybody up to see the Pokemon get revealed, and it ended up being a Riolu, the Aura Man himself. Riolu looked around the room and was like, what's going on? Who the hell are y'all? Don't touch me, get away from me! Riolu ended up crashing out and hitting Ash with an Aura Spear and ended up dipping. Riolu was in search for the Aura from the trainer that was worthy to hatch him, and he did not think from the looks of it Ash or Go were any of those trainers. Ash ran out in the middle of the night trying to look for Riolu, and he was trying to tap into the Aura energy that he felt earlier trying to locate him. Meanwhile, Riolu was having the worst night of his life, encountering so many different Pokemon and getting absolutely jumped by every single one of them, like these Rattata wanted him dead. Riolu ended up climbing a mountain and ended up encountering an Onix, and he wanted smoke. They ended up having a pretty heated battle, and Riolu was actually holding his own, but Onix was just a lot more powerful than him. Riolu got slapped to the ground by Onix, and Ash and Pikachu ended up finding Riolu in time trying to save him. They ended up charging their energy to face the Onix, and then Riolu realized Ash was the trainer that had the aura that was able to awaken him, and Riolu instantly started respecting Ash, knowing that he's the trainer that is able to bring out his true potential. Riolu and Ash ended up working together, and Ash commanded Riolu to be able to beat the Onix, and from there they became the best of friends, until Riolu passed out. He had some pretty grave injuries from getting jumped all night. Ash took Riolu to the Pokemon Center, and once he got healed up, Riolu decided to make the commitment to join Ash's team so Ash can help him become one of the strongest Pokemon ever. And from here, you would think everything is fine, but the story only gets so much more complicated from here. Ash did a pretty good job training Riolu and introducing him to the rest of the team. In a later episode where Ash was fighting at a battle festival, he ended up feeling the aura of another Lucario, and it ended up being Karina's Lucario. Riolu ended up getting so inspired seeing a Lucario, and he wanted to get stronger. Later on in the episode, Karina even shows off Lucario's Mega Evolution, and this was just the inspiration Riolu needed to see what his full potential would be like. This Pokemon got super locked in, training so much more, and in a future episode, they ended up going on a bridge and encountering a Galarian Farfetch, and Ash decided to use Riolu to try to capture it. Riolu went in to use a Force Palm, but then Farfetch tanked it. He went in to use a Nightshade, but then Riolu showed us his true speed by dodging the attack and making clothes of himself running around Farfetch. Riolu used these Shadow Clones to absolutely blast Farfetch down with a bunch of Aura Beams, and Farfetch still ended up surviving. Farfetch ended up deciding to lock in and made a tornado, eliminating all the double teams and even hit Riolu head on, and they were both pretty low on HP. Riolu ended up charging up the last bit of his energy to use Reversal against the Farfetch, and it ended up working because he ended up knocking out Farfetch and Ash was able to catch him, adding him onto the team. Riolu was really proving his work, rising up the rank and being used a lot more by Ash. Ash really was getting dialed in with Riolu, while simultaneously slowly pushing Pikachu away. I'm not kidding either, Ash would spend all day glazing Riolu and being proud of him and even start ignoring Pikachu, where Pikachu was really taking this to heart. Ash generally would not stop spamming using Riolu in all the battles that Pikachu started to feel left out, and Ash even had the audacity to not recognize what was going on and called Pikachu lazy for not really trying to battle anymore, making jokes that Riolu is going to take his spot, and this pissed Pikachu off, where he shocked Ash and really just didn't want to talk to him. Because of Riolu's presence alone, it started literally making Pikachu depressed to the point where Ash's mom had to give Pikachu a prep talk, letting him know that Ash kinda cares for him, he's just obsessed with his brand new Pokemon. And Pikachu believed this. After spending some time away from Ash and spending more time with Ash's mom, he decided to confront Ash the next day. Ash was getting ready to do some special training with Riolu, and Pikachu came over and just asked Ash if he could tag along and be a part of the battle. This is where Ash told Pikachu that he can just sit back, he just kinda wants to have one-on-one time with Riolu, and this pissed Pikachu off to the point where Pikachu literally ran away. Pikachu ran all the way back to Ash's Kanto house, and if it wasn't for Ash pulling up last minute, telling Pikachu that he's gonna spend more time with all of his Pokemon, not just Riolu, Pikachu would have just been gone for good. Riolu has to be one of the first Pokemon on Ash's team to get Pikachu this jealous, so it shows how much aura Riolu actually has. And speaking of aura, less than 5% of the people that even watch my videos are subscribed, and I don't normally like asking for subs, but these videos do take a while to make, and I really want to hit my goal of 100k, so if even just a few of you hit that sub button, we would easily smash that goal, so please subscribe. I also hear subscribing makes Pikachu pretty happy, so I don't know. Riolu's journey was looking pretty up, so much to the point where he wanted to challenge the fighting type dojo, and this was a bit of a tricky battle. All of Ash's other Pokemon were knocked out, and it was down to Riolu to fight B's Graplock. Riolu went in trying to use a bunch of vacuum beams, but Graplock just dodged it completely. He ended up getting super close to Riolu trying to grab him, but then Riolu used a bunch of double teams to evade the Graplock. Graplock tried to fight back and used an attack to get rid of all the double teams, but then Riolu started blocking everything. It was looking like a pretty even match. But Ash wanted to take the edge, so he told Riolu to hit the ground with his Force Palm, and it started to work, but the second Riolu went in to do another attack, he ended up getting grabbed. And this was completely devastating, because Packlock started going all out, just squeezing Riolu, throwing him to the ground, and completely trying to crush him. In the end, Riolu barely just broke out, and he started charging up his energy again using his ultimate attack Reversal. And Packlock started using Liquidation, and they ended up clashing together. And in the end, Riolu ended up losing. Graplock was able to grab Riolu, completely crush him, and then bash him in the head with his ultimate attack, so this Pokemon took an entirely different level of beatings. Ash was also pretty bummed out about this, since he felt like their training wasn't paying off. He spent so much time training this Pokemon, he's just losing. But Riolu, being the nonchalant Pokemon he is, did not care about this, just trained a little bit, locked in, went back to the dojo, and got his get back. They had another battle, and it didn't go that bad. Riolu was able to tie with the Graplock. And all this was leading up to one of the most important days in Riolu's life, the Darkest Day, which is basically the day Eternatus, the legendary Pokemon in the Galar region, comes back, and everyone had to come together to defeat him. The chairman of the Galar region wanted to use Eternatus' power for evil, and Ash and Leon were trying to stop him, but Ash was down to Pikachu and Riolu. Pikachu ended up using a few attacks, but he he got super tired, and then the chairman told his two Pokemon to go and kill Ash and just crush him, and then Riolu decided to jump into the way, tanking both of their attacks, protecting Ash, and when Ash thought there was no hope, Riolu started to glow. He was evolving into a Lucario, and when Riolu fully evolved, he was able to push back the two Pokemon, proving how powerful he is right off the jump. Lucario used Aura Spear to completely one-shot all these Pokemon, and when they made it to the top of the building, Ash met Go, and he also evolved his Raboot into a Cinderace, so Lucario and Cinderace were like the best of friends. They all ended up teaming up and defeating Eternatus with the power of Zacian and Zamazenta, and everything was looking up for Lucario. He was a Pokemon that evolved on one of the most terrifying days in Pokemon history, and he saved the day. But the biggest challenges for Lucario were just around the corner. Not even a few days later, Ash and Go were traveling throughout a cave, and they ended up encountering Mewtwo. Mewtwo ends up talking to Ash and Go about their dreams and why they want to catch these Pokemon and become the Pokemon Master. They end up getting into a battle with Mewtwo, and it was on site. Go sent out Cinderace and Ash sent out Pikachu, but the problem was Pikachu got absolutely one-shotted in under 1 second. Because of this, Ash put Pikachu to the side and decided to bring out Lucario to fight alongside Cinderace to see if they can handle Mewtwo. And this definitely wasn't a bad decision. Lucario and Cinderace went in to use Aura Spear and Fire Blast, but then Mewtwo used his Shadow Balls to push them away, but Lucario was still standing. They ended up deciding to do a group attack where Lucario made a bunch of clones of himself while Cinderace was weaving in between them to throw off Mewtwo. Mewtwo ended up using Almighty Push to send the both of them flying, but it was still a pretty good attack. Lucario and Cinderace were determined not to lose, so they went back in, having some hand-to-hand combat with Mewtwo, and Mewtwo sent them flying even further towards their trainers. When everyone thought it was over, these Pokemon still stood up. They wanted to defeat Mewtwo badly, and they had a plan for one final attack. Lucario jumped in the air, made a bunch of clones of himself, and charged up Aura Spear, while Cinderace was charging a Pyro Ball. They were going to combine all their attacks together to try to defeat Mewtwo. They managed to create one of the biggest energy balls in the series, hurling right towards Mewtwo, and it exploded. They thought the battle was over, until it was revealed that Mewtwo used Protect. Mewtwo kind of got pissed off by this and decided to lock in, and he made the biggest Shadow Ball attack I've ever seen in my entire life, and nuked every single person in the arena. Mewtwo instantly ended the battle, knocking out everybody, and he hung over Ash and Go, letting them know that their battle experience and their bond with their Pokemon are actually authentic, and he'll let them live for now, since they probably have really good dreams. This moment was very inspirational for Lucario, since he realized that he has a long way to go to get really strong, and the next avenue for him to get stronger would be Mega Evolution, which is what Lucario wanted to master next. They end up hitting up Karina, asking her if she can help Lucario learn how to Mega Evolve, even though I don't know why they're asking her, since her Lucario tweaked out the first time he Mega Evolved. But Karina and her grandpa ended up gifting Lucario a Keystone, and all they would need to do is find the Mega Stone for Lucario. Lucario locked in and used his aura and figured out that his Mega Stone would be at this island, which they ended up going towards, but it was a lot more difficult than just picking up the stones, since there are a bunch of Pokemon that were attacking them. Lucario ended up using his aura to locate the stone anyways, and it was in a rock, and when they were trying to unfreeze it, they got attacked by a Mega Alakazam because his trainer was guarding it, telling Ash that he has to defeat him in order to get the Mega Stone. Lucario and Ash were in a pretty tough battle, to the point where Lucario was dodging a bunch of attacks and even got paralyzed. Lucario thought to work smarter, not harder, so he ended up jumping on a bunch of rocks and just stole the Mega Stone. In the end, we ended up learning it was just Karina's dad that was testing them, so the battle wasn't really that deep, but it's funny to see that Lucario wanted that Mega Stone that badly. With all that being said, Lucario was now officially that guy. He had Mega Evolution, and he wanted to use it on his first target, on the dojo. Since when he was a Riolu, he got pretty packed out by Grapplock, so he wanted to show him how far he's came, so Ash challenged Bay to a battle. In this battle, Lucario wasn't a Riolu no more. He grew up, since he was absolutely packing out Grapplock so badly to the point where Bee had to return Grapplock and send out another Pokemon. She sent out Hawlucha, and him and Lucario had hand-to-hand combat, and it was going pretty well for both sides. Unfortunately though, this guy Hawlucha ended up getting a pretty good hit on Lucario, and when it couldn't get any worse, Bee returned Hawlucha and sent out Machamp. She was really trying to get the whole squad to just jump this one Lucario, and Ash had not switched out once yet. Lucario was actually pretty intimidated from Machamp, since he was pretty tired from his last two battles, and this was Bee's ace. Machamp ended up grabbing Lucario, and it looked like he was basically crucifying him, since he had Lucario's arms pinned down and was just hitting him with a bunch of attacks, even hitting him in the face with a close combat. Ash was ready to bail Lucario out by using Mega Evolution, but Lucario told Ash not to Mega Evolve. He does not want to waste his time using this power against his Machamp. Instead, Lucario just bashed his head against Machamp and broke free, and then Machamp decided to Dynamax. Ash decided to match the same energy and Mega Evolve Lucario for the first time. And this transformation was so badass. Ash has never Mega Evolved the Pokemon up until this point, and Lucario had so much power. Mega Lucario was so quick he was able to slam an Aura Spear into Machamp's head, making him D-Dynamax, and Machamp was super confused. Machamp went in for a close combat and Lucario went in, bashing the Machamp for one final collide, and Machamp realized that Lucario was just so powerful, and Lucario pushed right through and blasted Machamp with an Aura's Beam. Because of all this damage Machamp had, he ended up getting knocked out, and Ash was the winner, finally getting enough points to qualify for the Masters 8 and being able to maybe verse Leon. Ash knew he had some really big battles coming up, and he had to prepare since he didn't want to throw it. Go at the time had a Frogadier he wanted to evolve into a Greninja, so they went to the Kalos region, and Ash remembered that he has a Greninja, and Greninja's aura actually feels pretty similar to Lucario, so Ash was in search for Greninja, hoping that Greninja could maybe teach him some stuff so there's no chance that he loses the Masters 8. But this would end up being one of Ash's biggest mistakes and one of the biggest challenges for Lucario. While everyone else was sleeping, Lucario ended up feeling a pretty strange aura in the Kalos region. He ended up following it, and it ended up being Zygar's vines. Lucario tried using Aura Spear to get rid of it, but it didn't work. And then out of nowhere, Ash's Greninja appeared and cut down all the vines. Since this is the reason why Greninja left Ash in the first place, to destroy these things around the Kalos region so they don't take over the world. Immediately, Lucario was able to sense Greninja's aura and realize how powerful of a Pokemon he actually is. Ash ended up coming over because he sensed there was some commotion, and he immediately realized it was his Greninja that was stopping all the vines, and he was pretty happy to see Greninja again. They ended up working together to destroy all the Zygar parts, but Lucario felt off since he realized Ash had a connection to this Greninja, the same one that they do. Ash ended up introducing his two Pokemon to each other, and Lucario did not vibe with Greninja. It was the first time he was getting out-aura'd. Ash ended up asking Greninja if it was okay if he could battle Lucario and try to help him to become stronger. Greninja accepted this, and the battle began. When it started off, Ash thought it would go pretty well, but Lucario was getting absolutely embarrassed. Greninja was just way faster, better, and stronger than Lucario. Lucario started getting so frustrated with himself that he ended up even trying to use Mega Evolution, but it failed. Lucario just had so much anger that he wanted to beat this Greninja, and when he failed, he crashed out. He ran away from Ash, thinking that he wasn't worth anything and that this Aura Pokemon was way better than him. Ash wanted to go search after Lucario, but Greninja said that he got this and he'll talk to Lucario himself. When Greninja ended up finding Lucario, Lucario didn't want to talk to him. He was just so mad that this Pokemon was so much better than him and he used to be owned by Ash. Greninja ended up giving Lucario a lot of advice, even teaching Lucario how to better use his aura and to become stronger, and Lucario was very happy about this and even trusted Greninja fully now. Some more of Zygar's vines started popping up, and Greninja and Lucario ended up being able to easily defeat them. Ash was even able to confidently use the power of Mega Evolution with his Lucario, so Greninja taught him a lot. In the end, Greninja ended up fully training Lucario as his student, and they were ready for the Masters 8, and Ash was so grateful for Greninja's help, setting Lucario on the right path. And this training definitely paid off, because Lucario was the MVP in one of his toughest battles yet in the Masters 8, Ash versus Cynthia. Ash was down to his last Pokemon, it wasn't looking good, and it was just Lucario. Cynthia ended up Dynamaxing her Togekiss, so Lucario decided to Mega Evolve to try to take care of it. Togekiss went in to use a max airstream, and Lucario was such a menace he started running in the middle of the max airstream, charging up an Aura Spear and blasting at Togekiss. Even though it looked super cool, Lucario wasn't able to get a good hit off. So Lucario got pissed off and he decided to jump over Togekiss and just slam Togekiss with a close combat. Then Ash and Lucario ended up charging all of their aura, even getting some help from Greninja, where Greninja could sense this energy from the Kalos region to destroy Togekiss. In the end, Mega Lucario was able to knock out Togekiss, but Cynthia's ace was left. Garchomp, the most fearsome Pokemon in the Sinnoh region. Lucario and Garchomp were going head to head. It literally looked like an MMA match with the amount they were hitting each other back and forth. No moves, no nothing, just straight boxing. They ended up continuously clashing with each other, being a pretty even match. They were both pretty low on 1 HP, so they needed to end the battle quick and go in for their final attacks. Garchomp charged up an attack and hit Lucario in the back, and Lucario hit Garchomp in the stomach, and they both simultaneously knocked each other out. It was looking like it was going to be a draw. Every Pokemon was down, and we didn't know who the winner was, until Ash's Lucario started to slowly stand up. Ash finally won the battle against Cynthia, being the winner, defeating the Sinnoh League champion. This easily was Lucario's greatest battle, since Cynthia is a super strong trainer, and Ash is so proud of him. Yeah, Lucario did have some use against Leon in the final round of the Masters 8, but it wasn't as impressive as this battle. In the end, Lucario ended up being the ace on Ash's final team that won him the World Championship, so he's a pretty formidable Pokemon. And I'm sure that even Greninja, his mentor, would be proud of how far Lucario has came. And with all that said and done, we have finally covered all of Ash's ace Pokemon, so let me know in the comments which one is your favorite. I'll be reading all of your reasonings, and thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe or watch one of the videos on your screen, and I'll catch you guys next time.